Good morning. Welcome to the Monday, July 10th, regularly scheduled County Commission Committee meeting for your Santa Rosa County Board of Commissioners. It's a little after 9 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Hope everybody had a good 4th of July weekend and safe and enjoyed the fireworks and got to spend some time with family. Maybe got a little fishing in. And good to see everybody back again. Commissioner Salter, good to have you back. And Vice Chairman Cole, good to have you back as well. Start with the approval of the agenda on my right with Commissioner Parker. Good morning.
Good morning. Nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. No new items. Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Salter.
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, Commissioner Lynchard.
Good morning. No changes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Staff, do you have anything?
Yeah, just one note on item number 10, just editorial. If we would add the word emergency into that title there, it's non-emergency medical transport permit. Also, Mr. Chairman, we had scheduled to start the consent agenda on Thursdays this meeting. We've got just a little bit of a programming change we need to make after testing. We'd just push that initiative to the second meeting, if that's okay.
Thank you. No worries. Thanks for those changes.
No addition.
Thanks, Roy. All right, cool. Budget team working hard. 'Tis the season. All right. Have a couple of information-only items that I would like to add. One is related to the TPO and one is related to the Triumph Board, and I'll put those in just ahead of economic development. Giving no further changes, I'll approve this morning's agenda without objection. And hearing no objection, this morning's agenda is approved. Those information-only items, I just want to remind my fellow board members, we have a very important TPO meeting July 12th of this week, 9 a.m. It'll be held at the Gulf Breeze Tiger Point Community Center. And it will be the meeting when we approve our project priorities. And I just wanted to reaffirm we don't have any changes that we foresee as a board to our transportation project priorities. Is there anything that you gentlemen have looked at and feel the need to discuss before that meeting? Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things that's come to my attention, and I've yet to track it down through Peggy Kelly or anybody at the state level, is there's ongoing controversy about how to get through downtown Milton with Highway 90. And one of the possible remedies is to put more attention to the 87 north-south connector, very possibly alleviating enough traffic through that to answer the question of what do we do downtown. And since that has come to my attention, I reached out to Mary Beth Washnock about looking into that some and possibly adding that to discussion at that meeting. Don't know where it's going to go or how we can, but according to the folks in Chipley, if the TPO would feel that's an agenda item that we'd like to take up or move a little higher in the priority, that seems like they're ready to do so.
Okay. We've had the project priorities process has been developed over quite a bit of time with lots of meetings and public comment. And one of the things that I think we need to be mindful of is looking to add things to the agenda for discussion that could ultimately change those priorities here right at the last minute. I think it's good that we would have the opportunity to talk about those things this morning ahead of the meeting so that at the TPO we could kind of speak with a unified voice. But I appreciate those considerations and knowing that the four-laning or how we're going to look at solving that problem through downtown Milton has been discussed for quite some time. I could see where that could be developed as we look at the next year's project priorities. I would have concerns with adding that in here at the last minute, especially given that it's my understanding that the Escambia County delegation may not be able to attend because of a budget meeting conflict. So hopefully you'd be willing to
Sounds like a
consider
good time to get a bunch of priorities moved around.
that. Yeah. Well, I think that's where, maintaining the integrity of the process is important. I know we wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of that, and we've been working really well as a TPO here for a good little bit. So that would be something that I would not feel comfortable adding to the agenda or changing those project priorities without some really thorough discussion by this board on what we'd want the priorities to be. But I'm happy to entertain any comments from my fellow board members on Vice Chairman Cole's possible request to add that to the agenda for the meeting.
Where exactly, Mr. Chairman, do we have any sort of update? And I saw Brian's here with the city of where we're at with that. I mean,
The PD&E process is ongoing, and the PD&E process will be concluded within the next 12 months, it's my understanding. So we'll have the result of that feasibility study and a subsequent, I would think, recommendation from the district secretary.
what, I guess I'm curious, what's Commissioner Cole asking for us to elevate? That's what
I'll let him speak to that.
But it would just be a discussion and consideration, because there's been a lot of work, a lot of emphasis going in for several years about a north-south connector from 87 south to 87 north, and eventually basically an arc over 2 counties that would fall down and work with Escambia County to come the whole way over to the Molino area, creating a 2-county bypass. But this portion to connect Highway 87 north and south falls in, I believe, just south of Whiting Field in that area. Goes over Blackwater River, comes out, out past past the jail and the prisons. And it makes a connector route between the two that, as we see 87 South get 4-laned and all the work that's gone into 4-laning 87 North to the state line, creates a better evacuation route for our citizens on the south end to get up to I-65, and then it also would create a bypass, somewhat of a bypass around Milton. So truck traffic, different traffic like that has no need of going through downtown would come off of those numbers when they're doing the calculations for construction through downtown. Because to go downtown with a 4-lane is on again, off again. One city council wants that route, the other current city council does not. There's problems with making 2 one-way streets. Berry Hill's off the map. North of Berry Hill, they've run into some historic significance that pretty much takes it off the map. So they're back to looking at 4-laning through downtown. I'm just trying to look at all our options before we pull the trigger on this. And there is the option of possibly doing construction from Ward Basin Road to Highway 87 South, and then from Stewart Street West, and putting kind of a hold on or a no build on the downtown section until we can get a little more, all on the same page, I guess, for going through downtown or alleviating traffic downtown. And this is something new I've found out just recently, that DOT has some interest, but it has to be up to the TPO to reopen the book on this 87 north-south connector. So that's what I'd like to see us do if I have enough votes there to do that, see the feasibility and the cost and see just how far along FDOT is with the planning of that and get that north 87 route, back on the map. Maybe, I know there's a group that Commissioner Salter's been involved with called FAST to connect that. How can we tie all that together, maybe bring some federal fundings to bear and get this thing going a little quicker.
So not asking to change the project priorities, this is something that you would just like to see the TPO discuss?
I'd like to see us discuss it to see how much validity there is in the rumor. Because
Okay.
that's all I've found so far is that, there's I've approached DOT and haven't got a firm answer. So we as a TPO ask for an answer, perhaps we can get that, hey, yeah, we are not, so we know where we stand.
I think, as the incoming TPO chair, that might be something that this board could put as an agenda item on one of our meetings. We could discuss what the will of this board would be, and then we could collectively make that request to the district secretary, or we could add it to the September TPO meeting. Adding that in just before the meeting in 2 days' time, it seems like this would be something that would require quite a bit of discussion. So
Either way, or perhaps we can direct TPO staff we could do it on our own, but also direct TPO staff if there was a will to look more into this,
to get the answer, sure.
Okay.
I think it makes sense what you're asking. And as the PD&E study is reaching its conclusion, it's probably about the right time that we ask those questions.
And then, also putting it out there like we're doing right now, gets the city, more up to speed that, so they, Brian could go back and get the city council input on that too.
Okay. So no changes to our project priorities as we have them this year, but obviously a need to have some further discussions as we move toward subsequent meetings and our project priorities for the next year. The other item was Triumph Board. Just a reminder that July 13th, there will be a meeting of the Triumph Board, the first meeting where they've had 7 board members. They added 2 board members recently, and so that'll be the first meeting they've had there. And as I understand it, Erica and Shannon will be attending that meeting because we have a regularly scheduled county commission meeting at that time. And that takes care of the 2 info-only items. We now move into the regular agenda items. First, Economic Development Committee, special event application for 23rd Annual Christmas in the Park. You have the information in your backup. Is there any questions or concerns that anyone has about this event? They've got it pretty much on autopilot at this point. If not, then I'm fine with moving this to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, that item is moved. Item number 2, Gulf Cable promissory note. Is Mr. Seren here with us today? Thank you for being here. We have Senior Vice President of Gulf Cable, Mr. Seren, here this morning. And if you'd like to come up and say a few words, we're glad you're here. We're grateful that you're growing and doing business and bringing jobs in Santa Rosa County. And we love hearing about success stories like this where we have an opportunity to partner with a company and you've met all of the requirements, whether it's the construction requirements and the expansion that you promised us, and more importantly, those jobs at a very high rate above our median wage in Santa Rosa County, and that makes such a tremendous impact. So thank you for being here this morning.
And before I turn the mic over to Saran, I just want to say that we've worked with him for quite a number of years, and it has been a pleasure. So, Saran?
Well, we're certainly very happy to be here and welcome all the support that we have seen so far from the board, from Shannon and the team, Tina here. Manufacturing USA is not easy, but we have a very hardworking team, owner that works 24/7, is a great perception of the marketplace, team works hard, and we've been able to pull it all together. It took us under a year longer than we would have liked, but we broke ground in 2013. And as of about 18 months ago, we are in production, and we are running full capacity, adding people as fast as we can, good paying jobs, so we have very happy to be here. We're just adding another 100,000 square foot building, which will be mostly warehouse, maybe a small manufacturing space, in addition to 250,000 square feet that we've added. So it's been a good story. Hard work, but we're doing okay, and thanks for the support.
No substitute for hard work.
Correct.
100,000 square foot additional building and more jobs for Santa Rosa County to keep that money here.
Yes, sir.
We're grateful. Any members of the board have any questions? Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. I would move this item to Thursday's agenda without objection, noting that all obligations have been met. And hearing no objection, that item is moved. Thank you for being here this morning. Shannon, great job for you and Tina and your team. That takes care of the Economic Development Committee. Now on to the Administrative Committee. Item number 1 is the Estuary Program Proposal Update. Tony?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe we have representatives from BARC here that would possibly want to address this request and a little bit of change in the initial proposal as far as shifting to Escambia being the applicant, I believe, but I'll let them address that.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Laurent with West Florida Regional Planning Council. I'm the planning manager for Community and Economic Development. We currently serve as staff to the Bay Area Resource Council, and BARC, along with its Technical Advisory Committee, is finalizing a grant application for $2 million to the EPA. These funds are made available, of course, by the Restore Pot 2 dollar amounts that are allocated to the area. We wanted to put this draft application in front of you, just making sure that you're aware of the process. We have a deadline of August 1st, so we do, of course, welcome any comments that you might have prior to that. Now will be the time. We are looking at the grant application as competitive. We are outlining an organizational structure that works for our region. The requirements of the application include standing up a comprehensive management plan, a policy board, which the BARC would morph into at some point, and looking at Escambia County assigned as the host organization. This is another requirement of the application, that a host organization be established to be responsible entirely for the treasury responsibilities for the organization. Escambia County is looked at. We've had a lot of discussion about this back and forth with the BARC members and the Technical Advisory Council, and come up with a solution that makes sense economically for the organization to get the most activity planned out over the 4 years that we're projecting for some cost savings there. We are looking at inviting any comments that you have along these lines for any of the things that we've laid out in the organization.
Thank you. I have a few questions, but I'll open it up for the board first if they have any questions about the proposal. Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you. Is there any reason that the counties can't jointly be the applicant on this? Would it give it more bearing?
It would not be efficient. In other words, there is a requirement that one entity with history of accountability take ownership. Though the BARC is an interlocal agreement, it does not have that standing as an organizational, as a standalone organization for taking on the treasury responsibilities, if that makes sense.
Well, that makes sense.
That would be very messy, in other words.
BARC, but, you know, when we were asked to be, for Escambia to be the applicant, my question would be, why can't Escambia and Santa Rosa County be the applicants? Because we're going to select, we're going to select an entire operating procedure through that, as far as, different people in charge.
One of the things that is required is that this host organization have a singular DUNS number, employee identification number, basically looking at what is required of one organization. Over the long term, Those things have not been established as part of that interlocal agreement between the two counties. Had it been in the past, that answer may have been different. The partnership responsibilities, of course, will continue, looking at Santa Rosa County taking just as much leadership role and decision-making role going forward.
Okay, and then my only other question on when we start working down through the approach and timeline and selecting policy board and hiring a program director, you have Escambia County inserted there as part of the decision-making process for hiring that director. And I would wonder why we wouldn't have an equal seat at the table for hiring the director for this.
You would have a seat at the table when it comes to having input, but they have responsibility for hiring that person on as their staff member. Those are really two essentially different things.
How much input will we have to that?
Equal.
Equal, okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further questions at this time.
As it relates to, thanks for being here, Jennifer. As it relates to the makeup of the board, that board would be the decision-making body for this estuary program, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, for example, when you mentioned the hiring of the director, ultimately, after that person is hired, it would be a Escambia County employee, and we're looking at, it was proposed that they would be located in the Fish Hatchery and Marine Research Center when that would be completed.
That's hoped
I'm
for.
wondering, are they looking to use Pot 2 funding to fund the budget for this, what will be a new bureaucracy, a new wholly separate organization? Is this looking to be funded from Pot 2 funds, or is it looking to be funded from members of this board that would be stood up?
A couple of things will happen. One of the responsibilities of that new director, as well as later on hiring a grant manager to look for additional funds for sustainability, some even from the private sector, but making sure that there is a plan going forward after the organization is stood up, so to speak. There's no certainty or discernment at this time that those policy board members or organizations would so to have that commitment in place. Part of the task of establishing this organization is determining that.
Okay, so right now, the plan would be that so we can be eligible to win, to be the estuary selected, we're putting forward what our plan would be and what the structure of this organization would be, and we're doing that with the understanding that we don't know how we're going to pay for it if we get selected, or just trying to make sure that I'm clear here, because I have some serious concerns with setting up a very expansive organization without having a dedicated funding source. If we're selected, will Pot 2 funds go toward funding this new department?
That would certainly be the hope. We are not looking for commitment at this time regarding that.
Okay. So right now, we don't know how that would be funded. If we are selected, ultimately, we don't know if Pot 2 funds could be used for that.
This would certainly be an eligible expense, and we do know that there are other areas that are looking at commitment dollars to beef up their applications.
Okay. The other is the makeup of the board. And I'm wondering why, you know, as I look at the preliminary makeup of the board, the city of Pensacola has 3 members. ECUA, the utility, is requested to be added, but we have no utilities from Santa Rosa County that would be part of that decision-making body. When I look at the military, we have NAS Pensacola and we have Eglin represented, but we don't have NAS Whiting. So my question is, I heard you say earlier that Santa Rosa County would have equal say on this decision-making board, and yet as I look at the makeup of the board, we are definitely a minority voting participant. So could you speak to that a little bit, of how the board shapes up and how we would have equal say, if you will, in the decisions?
I will say that what the list of the projected board members is not something that is set in stone. It is something that the committee came up with, and I don't believe I was part of that conversation directly. I would imagine that we're looking for any and all participation of any committed members that will be willing to serve and represent the communities involved. So that's definitely a comment I can take back to the committee working on this draft.
Here's my concern.
I don't have a clear answer, in other words, of how that came about.
Well, I don't know when those decisions would be made, but those are the two main concerns I have, is that we don't know how we would fund this yet, and we don't know if this is the decision-making board. I don't have any assurances that we would have an equal footing, that Santa Rosa County would have an equal say in the decisions that are made in what could possibly be a $2 million agency. So can you give me any indication of when the decision would be made on the final board makeup and the authority that they would have?
The grant will not be awarded until later this year, and startup would be, early next year. The board would not be getting in motion until that time, and the selection of those members formalized. So there is still some time yet.
Okay, is nobody else share my concern with the makeup of this board and how we can have Escambia County making decisions, and then I guess it would just be up to us if we wanted to provide the funding that would come as a result of this. I see Erica shaking her head. If you would please come up and help me gain a better understanding of this, that would help me out a
Erica's been
lot.
involved in some discussions that I have not.
Yes, so first of all, I'd like to clarify that unfortunately a draft budget I don't think was included in your backup packet, but the primary reason that the BOCCTAC is looking at using Escambia County as the applicant is that they're able to provide a significantly lower overhead cost rate, unfortunately, than the Planning Council. Part of that is because this is a federal grant, like all Restore grants, and have the same type of federal administrative requirements associated with the grant. So Escambia County has stepped up and said that they have the available resources to handle that administrative burden. And so that is the only reason that the BOCCTAC has discussed utilizing Escambia County. With the $2 million grant, the draft budget right now, which I'd be happy to provide to all of you board members, is that $2 million will provide for the program to sustain the program for 4 years. So for that 4 years, all of the requirements of the grant will be met, including establishment of the management conference, development of the CCMP. So at that 4-year point, the SRA program should be close to self-sustaining. And a lot of that is going to depend on the work of the director and the other staff members of the SRA program. But the $2 million will cover and fund a 4-year program. In terms of your other questions, as far as Santa Rosa County having equal representation, the draft that you have in your backup is a draft, so it's still being refined. There's still language that's being clarified. Because of the short window of time here until the SRA, until the response is due, we wanted to get this information to you as quickly as possible. What would happen, and we'll be sure to clarify this, and in fact, I think it's even been clarified since the agenda backup was put together. The initial BARC board, which has equal representation from Santa Rosa County and Escambia County, 2 commissioners from Santa Rosa County, 2 commissioners from Escambia County, plus the representatives from the cities, that will be the initial policy board that will make the initial decisions. The chart that you were referring to that shows other stakeholders, that is a tentative list of stakeholders that as the BARC board merges into the management conference and the initial decisions are made, moving forward, that's sort of a pool of individuals that the BARC board can select to participate in a more formalized manner within this process. But the initial steps of the process will be the existing BARC board with 2 Santa Rosa County representatives and 2 Escambia County representatives will be that initial policy-making board for the estuary program. So we will have equal representation as Escambia County.
Okay, that helps me quite a bit. I would love to see that budget. I know you're not looking for any action today, but noting that we had an August 1st deadline, there's kind of a quick turnaround on this, so I wanted to get those concerns out there. The last question I have is, in reviewing the estuary program, and this was a year ago when I was looking at this, I noticed that, and I made comments at the time, that there wasn't a lot of Santa Rosa County specific programs, even though we were part of this estuary, and I'm wondering if we have any Santa Rosa County specific programs. I'm talking specifically of Santa Rosa Sound, which is our only impaired waterway, that would be part of this estuary program that you're aware of. Do we have programs as part of our projects? I know they had a map that identified specific projects in these different estuaries of things they were going to be working on to improve water quality, oyster habitat, seagrass beds, what have you. And I didn't recall seeing any projects for Santa Rosa County in the Sound. Are you aware of any that would be part of this estuary program?
I'm not sure if you're looking at the Restoration Council's comprehensive restoration plan. I'm not sure exactly what list of projects.
The Perdido, whatever the estuary program would cover. What is it called? The Perdido Key and Pensacola Estuary Program?
It would cover the Perdido and the Pensacola Bay watersheds, which encompass our area. And so with the development of the CCMP, which is the Comprehensive Management Plan, specific projects would be identified through that process. And so there will absolutely be projects within Santa Rosa County and most likely Santa Rosa Sound as well.
Okay. When I was looking at that, it had specific projects or proposed projects that had been identified, and almost all of them were Escambia County projects. They might have been treating stormwater before it was entering the bay and any number of projects.
Yeah.
But it was definitely tied to the estuary program. So you're telling me that we will have
The estuary program.
specific projects that would benefit Santa Rosa County as a part of participating in this estuary program?
We will control this estuary program. This estuary program will be new. So there is not a list of projects that the estuary program would have to work on. The program director and the grants manager and the scientist that will be the staff of this estuary program, that will be their job along with the policy board and the management conference to identify those opportunities. But they have not been identified yet. So I'm not sure. There are a lot of documents around, there's the swim plan, there's the comprehensive plan, there are a lot of different documents. So I'm not sure specifically which one has those projects you're talking about, but it's not this estuary program. There are no projects associated with this estuary program yet.
Okay. Thanks for clearing that up. Before I go to Vice Chairman Cole, just want to make sure I'm all clear here that the board makeup, we will have equal representation, that we're still yet to be determined on the $2 million, if that would be coming from Pot 2 funds or some other source.
That's what the grant is. It's Pot 2. It's
So it
$2
would
million.
be, so the budget would be funded from
4 years.
those funds?
4 years.
Okay.
And I'll email that budget out to you all.
Okay, that definitely helps out a lot, so there would not be any future monetary impact for Santa Rosa County to be covered from the grant. And then lastly would be that we would have Santa Rosa County specific projects as part of this estuary program. That gives me a much better comfort level. Thank you. Vice Chairman Cole, did you have any comments? Thank you. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just came off of being chair of BARC, but I'm still on BARC along with Commissioner Parker. And I share your same concerns because we start leaning this totally towards Escambia County and Perdido Bay. I'd like to make sure we get some, we got Blackwater River, Yellow River, the Sound, different projects that we'd like to see included. But the $2 million is basically only going to stand up the program. It's not going to get any projects underway. I mean, the way I look at it,
The $2 million is both. It provides for hiring the staff, setting up an office setting up these boards, but it does begin baseline monitoring, looking at potential projects. So there is some capability, over 4 years, there's going to be some activity.
There has to be specific goals set to qualify even for the
Correct.
project. And again, this is if we even get picked up for this, because
Yes.
we're in competition. Has there been any talk yet about extending this program to more than just one region?
They refuse to comment on that question. We've certainly asked. We also look for the opportunity of providing a little mentorship to our other areas in Florida, with the idea being that it is likely that there will be additional funding, but they cannot say that. So, and the same is being said among the other organizations, that they would choose to be a leader in bringing us
They're all
along.
equally important. I mean, all of our estuaries are important.
Right, and
all
we're
of them.
playing well together.
Yeah. So I recall the folks from Mobile coming and sharing with us their estuary program. And as you said, the funding for this to continue has to come from outside sources. Do you recall some of those outside sources? So, because I'm not sure if Commissioner Parker was even at that meeting. of
I was
BARC,
not
but
at that meeting. I was wondering if Eric was, do you know?
The rest of the board, it may be helpful for the rest of the board to know where are some of these sources that we can look for, because Mobile Estuary Program is doing very well. So what are some of the examples we can look at?
Well, the Mobile Estuary Program right now is actually taking advantage of a lot of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill funding sources. That's where they're actually receiving the bulk of their funding right now. But there are opportunities for corporate contributions, and that's why you'll see some potential corporate partners on the list of potential stakeholders. The BOCCTAC has been working real hard about reaching out to entities like Gulf Power and some of the other industrial companies in the area. As I'm sure you know, ECUA also participates on the BOCCTAC. So there's plenty of opportunity for funding from corporate sponsors, from other grant sources. Again, one of the points I've tried to stress as in any of my Restore presentations where I've talked about the estuary program, is that once we have that CCMP and we have that established baseline of information, we are much more eligible and grant ready, as we use that term, to receive additional grant funding to support the program. So, the program director and the grant writer and the scientist, they'll be looking at all of those avenues. And if you met with Roberta Swan, who is ahead of the Mobile Bay Estuary Program, I believe in the presentation that I saw, she also mentioned how important it is to be business-minded and be out in the community and not just, science-focused. And so that's the community outreach component will be a huge part of the estuary program.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Tony?
Yes, just for clarity, excuse me, if you recall, last year I believe we had a request from the Planning Council to increase our contribution to BARC for 1 year from 5 to 15,000. We did that in the FY17 appropriation. We have dropped that back in this FY18 budget prep to 5,000. I'm just wondering, I'm assuming that that's accurate, correct, that our level of funding is not being requested to stay at that level. That was a request for 1 year, I believe, to help us get to this point. I believe was the purpose, as I understood it.
The Planning Council has been in discussion with the TAC also about how we transition that into their hands as they become a stand-up organization. So that's definitely the plan. As long as the Planning Council is staffing the organization and spending the time coordinating this grant opportunity, we have been requesting the funding to stay at the same level. We do realize that that was, discussed as a special exception. The funding level has been at 5,000. We, of course, would like to continue to be able to put as much time and effort into this as possible. We leave that to your discretion, obviously.
Vice Chairman Cole?
Mr. Chairman, since the county administrator asked, I would say we put the 10,000 extra in last year. Let's see if we get, fortunate enough to get picked up for the estuary program, then this board could review the additional funding at that time if we get if we get the opportunity to participate.
I agree. Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 2, judicial site submittals. Tony?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if you recall, at a prior meeting, we had, were directed by the board to do an RFP, and that at that point, the direction was to just bring them back in their raw form to the board. The board would discuss any sort of segregation, elimination, or future direction once we saw what sort of proposals you received. So we're at that stage. You have those in your backup. The information is what was received. You received five proposals, and you have the one unique proposal that was offered on that Moore's property that was a build and lease option, which we didn't ask for, but was included. That obviously would be something the board could discuss as far as interest in that sort of an arrangement with whether it be that applicant or others.
Open it up for comments from the board. Won't everybody speak at once?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Lyncher?
thank you. Tony, one thing that the board has, we've talked about before, is the county-owned property over at, across from Public Works, Pine Forest. Have we done any more investigating over there in terms of suitability of that site?
Excuse me, we've not done anything else relative to, I believe the suitability of the site is pretty much predetermined. Your high and dry property there, we have about 6 acres. We would need to add property to that location to make it feasible for the judicial facility. We've not discussed with any other property owners in that area their interest in that site. There is the 6 laning of Highway 90 does propose for Pine Forest Road to be extended to Highway 90 and the Kmart intersection, red light being located at that new intersection. So if you wanted to consider that, certainly that intersection would need that sort of improvement to make that facility probably feasible for increased traffic.
Do we have any sort of timeline from FDOT on intersection improvements there that you're aware of?
I do not. We could get that information, but I don't believe we have that at this point.
Okay, thank you. You know, the board had discussed that location a year and a half ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. These discussions tend to run together, but that's county-owned property, 6 acres there on Pine Forest, adjacent to Public Works, near Public Services. You know, the school board's going to have a facility out there. Any property, if we did have to add any property on there, it's residential. It's, you know, we're not talking about highway frontage that we would need. So I'd like the board just to think about that as another option for staff to investigate as we move through this process.
Commissioner Lynch, I'd just
Thank you for that recommendation. Commissioner Parker, you're recognized.
just add that looked at that piece a little bit, and really for us, if we wanted to have the entire, I'm going to say block, basically, roads from 4, there would only be 4 other parcels which have homes. Obviously, the one is the fellow there directly to the south with the 5 or 6 acres, but there'd be 4 homes total. Not a lot. I think, like you were saying, the price, even if we decided that we needed that to be a little bit more comprehensive, would probably be cheaper than some of these commercial spots. But I have had an opportunity to talk with at least one representative from the city council, and I know that they had liked that spot, just in trying to juggle some of these around. I think if that's, you know, an area that we could have two fellas that like that spot, I mean, I would definitely support it.
Commissioner Salter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just hope we can make a decision. From day one, I have supported something around Avalon and Highway 90. I see that the JDL property, Avalon Boulevard and Mulet intersection is still available. It's anywhere from 13 to 19 acres. I just want to make sure that we're not only building for current needs, but looking into the future, and don't tie our hands with a limited number of acres where we can make the right decision today or in the future for expansion over the next 10 or 20 years. So I'm going to continue to support JDL of Santa Rosa, LLC. I like the concept on Pine Forest Road. I'm just not sure how much we'd end up spending if we go into trying to buy other people's property, two-lane road versus the JDL property on a four-lane Avalon Boulevard, which also backs up to Mulet. So I think it just makes sense to just go ahead and buy the property, call it the courthouse site, and then move forward. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Salter. Vice Chairman Cole, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Commissioner Salter coming on board with that, because that's also the piece that I've currently been looking at. And several reasons. I considered the location there by Public Works, and there again, we'd have to buy out some homes. Even relocation of Public Works would be very costly if we decided to put it on that property where Public Works currently is. When you factor in the new property for Public Works, tear down, relocation cost of a new building for Public Works, and then, of course, the 5 acres across the street is not ample property. Looking at the JDL property, it does give us ample property. It gives us access from Mulet Road and also Avalon Boulevard, where, you know we need multiple access because of Sally Ports, and the judiciary need to have separate access to keep them isolated from the public, not just in the building, but as you start to get into the building. Now, I know we've got a citizen that doesn't want us to see property, but I would only be willing to support this if we made a commitment to build the building in a way that public defender would have room in there, therefore putting the Fisher Hamilton building up for sale, that the 5 acres we currently have that would at that point not be of any use, we put it up for sale. And then if you look at the property from JDL, it's a total of, I believe, 19 acres. I think just something for this board to consider is that if we bought, and going from what they're asking to compared to, just throwing an example out there, if we ended up being able to buy that entire piece of property a little under what they're asking, let's call it $950,000, and sell 5 lots off of that, and not even making them an acre a lot, but making them smaller. Once we develop all that infrastructure, I think there'd be a appetite for growth out there, that the county could possibly sell off a couple of those lots, get part of that investment back. Just again, for speculation reason, if we bought it for, say, $950 and we're able to sell 5 lots for $50,000 a lot after the infrastructure's developed, we're down to $700,000 in the balance of about 15 acres. So just trying to look at this in business sense, and adding to that what Commissioner Salter said. We've got a plan for the future of Santa Rosa County. That's our job to do. And I'm trying to get this up on the property appraiser's website. If you'll give me just a moment, or some of y'all can maybe help me get it up here. there's an access to that we may also have availability for. Why am I having a hard time with this?
We can probably project that, I believe.
If you could, please, let's get that up on the screen, because there's something interesting about that piece. Okay, there it is. If you go and click on this piece right here, let me just go up here and show it so we don't have a pointer. Click on that piece of property right there. It ties into all our roads. It doesn't have any.
So this is just a picture of the thing. This isn't the actual website.
Oh, it's not the appraiser's web, okay. I'd like to identify that piece. I pointed it out so the public can also see it, but can we put a marker on that to put it up on the screen? Got a way to,
Yeah, my cursor's won't show up.
can you, I just wanted, everybody to be aware of the piece I'm talking about if they're not already, but basically the piece of property, if you go under Mulat Road, the O under Mulat or under Road, that piece of property that extends into the blue lines. When I clicked on that yesterday on the property appraiser's website, it kind of appears like could be county property, and if so, there's another access place that we would have. Again, we have to have a judiciary entrance, we need to have a Sally Port entrance, and we need to have public entrance. So would that make that piece of property more tasteful if that's already county property? And I need to have some help identifying that there we go. Yeah, when I click that on a screen on the website for the county property appraiser, it looks to me like it falls in the outlines of our road. And anybody else got that up with me? It says.
Staff, is there any way that we
No
can
data
pull up
found,
the
yeah.
property appraiser's website and maybe go to that location? Is that possible?
But if that's, I think everybody's catching where I'm going with this. If that's already county property, that gives us another access port off of Mulat Road.
While we're efforting that, we have a member of the public who would like to address the board. Good morning, sir.
Jerry Cooey, good morning, 6049 Arnie's Way. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. While we're scratching through web pages, how about a brief description of the 5, where they're located, what their cost per acre is, if you don't mind, somebody? The 5 RFPs that came back.
I can tell you what the 5 are, and they're in the backup. The 5 were Guidry Land Development offered the Avalon, they're the owners of the Avalon to Moores property. They didn't offer a price, just that they would build a facility and lease it. The JDL is 13 to 19 acres with a range of, excuse me, $1,027,000 to $1,159,000. Jennifer Byram's property out at East Milton, the 15 acres, was offered for free. The Seville Square Realty, which is the old Beckford Ford site, was $1 million, which
What, the last one, say that again? I had trouble hearing you.
Seville Square Realty offered the Beckford Ford location on Highway 90.
For how much?
Getting there. 10.7 to 37 acres, 1.3 million to 2.3 million. Tahar Cronley offered a parcel on Avalon Boulevard at Commerce Road, 13.56 acres for $1 million.
And then at the county offices, that's a possibility. That's property we already own, right?
We own about 6 acres there.
Right.
Jerry, and we probably have to realistically acquire some property across the street there, I think is it across the street or something, same? in the
There's
same-
actually, I believe Commissioner Parker mentioned there's 4 parcels. To the south is a large parcel there, 5 or 6 acres. To the east would be 2 residential parcels, I believe, on Oak Street. I believe it
Do
goes
they have
over Oak
houses
Street.
on them already, those two?
A couple of the parcels do.
Okay.
But it's largely vacant land. But the FDOT plans are to put in an intersection there at Pine Forest and Highway 90. So
Right.
that would open up that whole area to easy access to go east or west on 90.
Right.
And eliminate the problem that we saw a couple years ago when we looked at that site.
Right, okay. So what it looks like to me today is we have Commissioner Parker and Commissioner Lynchard that are leaning towards good stewardship and a lower cost option. We have 2 commissioners that are back to buying expensive developers' property. So Commissioner Williamson, looks like you're the man. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of calls. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, can we get back to identifying that piece of the staff, and that will bring that up? There we go.
You see it's highlighted there in orange. I can zoom in slightly, but it says no data found for parcel. It is connected there to Mulat Road
Yeah.
and outlined.
And here's what I'm getting at, and I can appreciate what Jerry's saying, but we also don't know what it would cost to buy those other parcels that are just south of the 5 acres we currently own, and that's why I injected that we would sell that 5 acres, because not needing it anymore, and trying to recoup part of our investment by us buying more property and developing it. But if that piece right there, that, thank you, is already owned by the county, that's even more of a reason to put it here on a fresh piece of slate that's accessible to all the citizens of the county, the south end of the county, and not for us just to make a decision on where to put this, but to make a decision based on what will pass muster for the citizens of Santa Rosa County to support the sales tax that's going to be needed to build the structure. So that's going to weigh heavy on me as far as if we already own that, or if that's some sort of easement that we can use to put another road into this piece of property. I think it just makes that location even that much better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Cole. As I look at it, and the 5 options there, and I appreciate the comments that have been brought forward, the Public Works site and this current site that we've been speaking of, the JDL site. Both of those, to me, seem like they have a lot of moving parts associated with them. Either we have to relocate Public Works, or we have to buy some additional property, or here we just have the cost of the property. To me, the Guidry one is far and away the best option from the standpoint of it would not require the county to put out as much capital, because we would be, there would be no land cost other than ongoing lease, and we would not have to construct the building. The building would be built for us, and we would be leasing the building back. So I can definitely see where a cost analysis should be done to where we can start honing in on what would be the real cost as we look at, let's say we put a 50-year time period on this project. What would be the cost to taxpayers, what would be the cost to the county over the course of this 50-year time period? And one of the, I have no interest in figuring out how to go into the land sale business, and we're going to buy a property so that we can start segmenting it out. I understand the reason why you're saying that, to offset the cost of the land, you would sell that. I just don't know that that's what government does best. And it seems like the more moving parts that you have associated with a judicial center project, the more it would be doomed to failure again, and that we should try to keep this as simple as possible. So for me, I think the Guidry land development is the best possible option. We could choose the location on their property where we'd like to have it. We could choose the size of the parcel. There is no land cost. Somebody else is developing the property according to the specifications that we would set forward, and it is a great location. It provides a lot of options, and the company that would be doing it has a federal building that they have previously constructed, so we would have clear evidence of the type of work product that they do. And to me, that seems like the best option. But as far as a way forward for the board, I would recommend that we look at maybe selecting 2 locations or trying to look at narrowing things down a little bit, and let's move toward some type of cost analysis to where we have many different offerings here, and then we have county-owned property that is not part of this RFP that we may want to evaluate, and wondering what the board feels about maybe doing a cost analysis after the best locations on Avalon. It looks like we're kind of centering around the Avalon area, that we would determine a couple of locations and then try to get a cost analysis done, give staff time to take a look at comparing what the cost would be. Commissioner Lynchard.
Just wanted to clarify, Mr. Chairman, the Pine Forest site would not require relocating Public Works. It's across the street from the Public Works complex.
I apologize. All that would be required there is just possibly some acquiring of property. Okay.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Young. I'm with Seville Square Realty. I submitted one of the 5 proposals, and I've not specifically heard the proposal addressed. I've heard the other, I guess, 2, plus a new one that's been added, plus support, I guess, Guidry, JDL. And I agree with you wholeheartedly, Chairman Williamson. Real estate is probably not something, that land development, that you may have a lot of experience in it, maybe you don't, but keeping it simple is absolutely something I think that the county commissioners should consider. And there is, in real estate, an old saying that holds very true, which is location, location, location. I've heard mention of all of that, but the property that Seville Square Realty has submitted on behalf of the parcel owners has by far the best location. It's on US Highway 90. There are enclosed in your proposals that I've provided to all of you improvements that are DOT has planned for Highway 90 and Glover Lane at that intersection. I heard this referred to as the old Orville Beckford Ford location. That's correct, but it also includes another 6.013 acres on Glover Lane that you have access from Glover, you have access from US Highway 90, and there's an additional up to 25 acres behind that for a total of 37 acres. So you would definitely be able to address your concerns of putting everything in a central location, not too terribly far from where your courthouse has been for years. So I would ask that you take a closer look at this proposal submitted by Seville Square Realty for that parcel that gives you room for growth. It doesn't say that you have to purchase 37 acres. You can purchase whatever portion of the parcels as outlined in this packet that I gave you. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to listen to those and then come back with a response if I don't have one readily available. But I definitely think you should give it consideration for the citizens of Santa Rosa County, rather than just, I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. I think it's just far too important. There's been a lot of conversation about this issue for years. I'm a real estate broker. I'm also a Florida registered paralegal. I also work in a law office. I also go to the county courthouse for all the reasons that regular citizens do, but for business. And so I see the issues for security. That's a major issue at your current courthouse for the judges, for the people coming in and out. And I think that the security that you need, you have the ability to have a long lead-in from, I'm not a designer, you're not designers, and I think that, you know, the Guidry that you mentioned, that proposal, Guidry, that's something that wasn't requested. I mean, I appreciate that they've submitted their building plans, but I think that it's not fair to the rest of the people not to have an opportunity to submit building plans. There may be other people out there who are far more qualified than them. They may be the most qualified, but I don't think that that's proper to submit something that wasn't requested and then have that be considered without giving others the opportunity. Maybe that's not your plan, but that's what I thought I heard. So I appreciate your time. I'm not going to ramble on much longer, but I think that it's important that you give this consideration, this parcel. It's not very far from your current location. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will open it up for board questions if they have any questions of you. But as it relates to the Guidry proposal, we did put forward a very broad RFP, and it was asked for folks to provide proposals for a judicial center and a site, and they've done that. The fact that they offered something that none of the other folks that submitted offered doesn't mean that they were out of bounds here. It just means that they provided an option that would have it be a lease instead of having the county buy property up front. And I think that's, you said it best, I think that it's definitely different. You know?
It is different. Excuse me for interrupting, but I think what I heard was that they would be building, or they would build the facility. And in your RFP, I did not see anywhere where you requested for people to, I mean, I could have gotten a commercial contractor, I'm sure, to submit a building proposal or something along that lines, but it specifically said land for a judicial site. So I went down the list and checked them all off to make sure I had everything covered. So thank you.
Thank you. I think it's just developed. If we end up with selecting locations, then I think it would be wise of this board to look at a build-to-suit option, especially since we have spent so much money in the past providing different footprint and design options and sizes and all of those things. If we could outsource that to somebody that builds buildings of this size and scope, has experience with it, and looked at a build-to-suit option, I think that could be a great way to go. Commissioner Parker, any board members have a question for?
Thank you. This is Mrs. Young, correct? Okay, thank you. Two things, and I'll piggyback because I know we're kind of fluid. I had actually talked with the county administrator about that issue you're talking about. It wasn't specifically asked for that, and I agree. It was actually our county administrator's idea that he told me, and I think it was great, would be that no matter, I think the goal would be try to narrow down the sites today. Absolutely nothing would stop the board from doing an request for proposals for people to come back with a build and, lease and purchase buyout thing. That way, like you said, if other companies want to offer that, I mean, there's no reason to tie our hands and not do that. I think that's a great idea. And even the one they submitted, I think it was more of a conceptual, hey, we will. There's no cost or anything like the chairman had said earlier for us to look at. I would address, though, because I can appreciate the amount of hours that was put into this location, and I think from the face value of it staying in the city of Milton that they would probably strongly support it. I'm just making an assumption, but my caveat to that issue of why I didn't address it is right now we have a huge question mark with what will DOT do with that realignment. And I think, as you heard earlier, we're talking about downtown and 4-lane and Milton, and this could realistically be, I would say from watching history and current things, this could be a decade out before either realignment happens or we get confirmed that there's no realignment or that it changes. And I wouldn't feel comfortable with choosing the property purely from that aspect, because then if we purchase property, I will say my goal, even with the public works site, I think I've looked at that. I've talked with another real estate broker about that has nothing to do with any of the land around it, but it's just kind of been a sort of a lifelong mentor of mine. And even wherever we're at, if we spend money on it, my hope is that we move forward, that within the next year or two we can see the project going. And I don't know how, I guess I'm kind of asking because I don't know how realistically we could even consider that on this property with the uncertainty of what DOT is now looking at in the area.
Okay, I appreciate that comment, and I have done the research on that as well. I've been in contact with Alan Van, who works with Peggy Kelly, and that's included the correspondence, some of it anyway, back and forth between FDOT, specifically addressing that property address and Glover Lane. And the only projects that they have even in the draft stage are the ones that are included in your packet. And you can verify that with them. I'm sure. Have you?
No.
Did anyone do that?
They came and gave us a presentation here on this, and that's what I'm saying. If we look at the city of Milton, and I'll just kind of say it because I have, we're choking East Milton residents out to try to get back in town to navigate over that bridge. That's been talked about since I was a boy. I mean, like Commissioner Cole said, things can fluctuate with city councils. We don't even know, what the city may weigh in on this in 2 years after elections. It could change. So respectfully, that's why I could not support this location, is due to the uncertainty involved around it with DOT. Things could change.
Excuse me, are you speaking of the uncertainty on, do you think they're going to move the 4 lanes of Highway 90 that run in front of 6400 US Highway 90?
I'm talking about with a possible realignment of Glover Lane.
Right, and Glover Lane simply runs along the west border of this, what would be this parcel, and there is a total of 37 acres. You're only asking for 15, so I'm sure that you could carve out from this parcel your requested 10, is it 10 or 15 acres that you asked for? I'm sure that you could do that out of this, and that the Glover Lane realignment would be something that certainly you have the resources to address. So I appreciate your comments. I'm not trying to be rude. So
No,
please
thank
don't
you. I
take it
just
that
wanted
way.
you to know where I stood on it. And
Okay.
what we had.
Thank you. Just a friendly recommendation before we're going to, just so we know, we're going to take a break at 10:30, but just something to throw out there to move things along to Thursday. Would the board have any interest in going with, I believe it, Pine Forest, Guidry, and JDL to have direct staff to do a cost analysis between those 3 locations?
I'll second that.
And that'd be something that we could support, and we can have staff look at. Dan, do you have any recommendations, or Tony, do you have any recommendations on, or could you come back to the board on Thursday with recommendations for what items would be included in that cost analysis? Because I understand we have to be careful that we don't get to a point where it ticks over into something that we need a professional consultant to do. So I don't want it to be too laborious, but could you give us some ideas on what that would look like?
Well, I think what we could do would be on Thursday, we could define for you what we would maybe recommend that our task be. I don't want to try to come off the cuff with that right now, but we could define that for you on Thursday, and then if you had other things, we could add that into the mix. Obviously, with the in the cost analysis, we almost would need to either get with Guidry and talk a little bit more about a 50-year plan that you mentioned, evaluate that and try to just give some thought to that as it relates to the other parcels as well that you might narrow it down to give you a kind of a apples and apples look at that. So I think somebody mentioned if we just kind of hone in on the sites, and then if we want to take the design build concept, lease concept, we can kind of extract from that some sort of thought.
Yeah, because all of them, I see where you're getting, all of these are kind of broad, for one way or one reason or another. So if we could get to what the land cost would be and what the overall cost to the county at the end of the day would be. If it's the Pine Forest location, all right, we think we may have to buy this many parcels for it to work, and we estimate that the overall cost would be X. And we do the same thing for all three. Maybe that would allow us to narrow it down even further. Before we move forward with any formal recommendation, you okay with that? All right, Vice Chairman Cole, are you okay with that recommendation for Thursday?
Yes, sir. I feel like it's only fair for us to lay out where we're at with these for the folks that have submitted. And I'll just go down the list. Tahar and Cronley, I don't believe is a good location, and I believe the price is too high. Seville Square Realty, I don't believe it's a good location. I've walked that property behind Flammer Beckford Ford. I've been, for years now, since I've been on the board, talking to different developers about that piece of property. I've walked it. It's got a lot of wetlands issues and creeks running across it that we'd have to deal with. And Jennifer Byram's property, although it's a nice offer of free property, we do have the congestion in East Milton. And again, I have to vote my conscience on what the citizens of Santa Rosa County would support in property. Nothing's free. There's infrastructure development. There'd be a need to access South Airport Road to have multiple egress. So those three I'm taking off my table. JDL property, I've already explained that. I would like by Thursday to identify that piece of property that I pointed out. The Gaudry land development, I'm interested in listening to that for the points that the chairman have made, but I will not lease something for a long term and end up costing Santa Rosa County citizens a lot of money in interest. We have the ability to pay this thing out in 5 to 10 years. Buy the property, build the building, and pay it out with a half-cent sales tax if we can get that passed, and be free of this debt and not have an overbearing interest or markup, whatever you want to call it, on this piece of property. So if we throw the figure out there of $40 million to buy land and build a building, and we could pay that off basically almost just with a 5-year or 6-year sales tax and not have an absorbent amount of interest involved, and I would not be interested in paying some other company to build it for us and pay them a bunch of interest over a long term. Basically what I'm saying is I'd have to see bottom line on both projects and subtract one from the other and know how much extra it would cost us to have them take this job on for us. So I'm interested in seeing that, but I won't support it if it's an absorbent amount of profit to them and loss to the citizens of Santa Rosa County. And then for the Public Works area, and I'm sorry I convoluted that with moving Public Works, because I see now Commissioner Lynchert and Commissioner Parker's idea of adding to our 5. I would suggest staff just simply approach Mr. Ballou, because his piece of property would give us a total of 12 acres. Rather than knock on the doors of each one of them homeowners out there, just CE has the biggest portion that would, actually we could do what we need to do with just his portion and without the others. And if CD throws a number out there, that could be added to the mix to know where we stand on putting a judicial center on not partial property. And all these are going to be approximates, but I think it's something that we need to have to make that decision and also to respond to our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cooey?
6049 Artist Way. Blue would love to have some of your money. I think I know him well enough to say that for him. One other piece that I failed to throw out 2 weeks ago is we have a beautiful facility on 87, the Pullum Industrial property, which we paid $3.4 million for. There's 87 acres there, highway access, beautiful piece of property that as of February of next year will be sitting there vacant for 9 years. So That's another real good opportunity. You were discussing earlier of extending 87 through. We know that the 4-lane from a Whiting Field to the Alabama line's coming in. You got a short section that would cut in underneath Whiting Field to that tie-in. 4-lane road, easy access. Just another one I think you should consider.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Cole.
And Jerry, I appreciate that. I'd like nothing better to see the courthouse out driveway of my house, but I, just like with Jennifer's piece, I'm looking at what I think the citizens of Santa Rosa County would support. And after the last go-around, talking to people on the south end, talking to people in Pace, I don't think we'd get support for us to move it to that side of the river and up there. And that's the only reason I won't support that. So.
Ms. Mahout.
Wallace Mahout, 5500 Cox Road, Milton, Florida. I have to say that I agree with Commissioner Cole about not leasing land and a building. Is that lease going to be set in stone for 100 years? Can they raise, what they want to lease that area and the building? I think ownership is always better, better to buy than rent. So I don't agree with that. Of course, I haven't seen all the facts yet, but I would try to avoid that situation. I know this has been going on for such a long time that you really want to get it solved and get it moving forward. I also agree with Jerry on the I-10 industrial park. I always thought that would be a good location. It's easy access from the south. You can come up 87, which is going to be 4 lanes all the way. You can come up and connect to I-10 over the Garcon Point Bridge. Easy access. You don't have to deal with downtown Milton for that location. So, and I don't understand why people on the south end don't like that location, because it really is easy access. But again, I would just say please stay away from the lease option, and I'd like to see the numbers on that. Thank you.
Thank you. If no more members of the board have any comments, I'd like to recommend that we direct staff to perform a cost analysis on the Pine Forest, Guidry, and JDL locations, and that they would come back Thursday with recommendations for what that cost analysis would include, and members of the board can get together with Tony and talk through that or provide their recommendations on what they would like to see that include. Commissioner Parker, you're recognized, and then Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you. Just real quick, don't want to miss the opportunity to throw it out there. Talked with Mr. Henry about that property there on Sterling Way. Still an option if there was interest, but if I'm not getting the nod, then I'm willing to go move past that. As far as the Byram property or the I-10 industrial site, if there were 2 other guys on that, probably even more so on the industrial park property, I could support that. So I'm just throwing it out there to the fellas. When I talked with people, I think the biggest issue that the public had with the folks that I met that were not in support of the sales tax, I don't think it really would have mattered if it was Pace, Pea Ridge, Milton, or East Milton. It was just when they read in the paper, we were choosing the most expensive site with downtown. So I think if we looked at an East Milton option and we said, hey, we're choosing a prudent site as far as cost, because we're not having to spend any money on the land, I know geographically it may not be quite as convenient as Avalon or 90. I was just throwing it out there before we scratched it. If there were two other guys that maybe felt the same way, I don't think that that's wouldn't be palatable to the voters if it was cost conscious, because the majority of folks anyway, I'm just throwing it out there because I know it takes three to do anything, so I wanted to let y'all know how I felt.
Okay.
But if there's
Vice
no
Chairman
other
Polk.
interest, then I'll scratch that too.
Commissioner Lynchard?
And I appreciate your thoughts there, Sam. I don't look at the action we're taking as scratching those off the list right now. I think we're working towards finding the best location. We're not going to find it on Thursday. The I-10 Industrial Park seems like a great location. It's right off of I-10, easy access from Navarre, easy access from Gulf Breeze, Pace, Milton. Because of the interstate access, it's as easy as anywhere to get to. I seem to remember from the last time we discussed that, though, is it in an airport environment? Military air zone. So there was an issue with putting a place of assembly on that property. The other thing is it is a certified site, and as such, some of the most valuable property that the county owns. Although it's not occupied now, but it is a certified industrial site, one of only a handful in the state of Florida. So, but it's still out there, and we can revisit that in the future.
The aircraft zone is a narrow band on the back east side of that, would be the only portion of that. It's just a little bit of it. It's not a whole lot of it, but.
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chairman Cole?
just one thing I want to throw out there for clarification. When I said possibly sell off some lots on that property, we don't have to be in the sales business. I mean, we sell lots now in our industrial park, and we don't physically get involved in the sale of that. We got an economic development that does. If we just notified or went out for proposals to turn that over to a realtor, and that's just throwing out some ideas there. I mean, we're in the land buying and selling business. As I said, if we found out we don't need that 5 acres, and that turns out not to be what we do, my thoughts are we put it on the chopping block. Fisher Hamilton building, when we evacuate that building, there's no sense in us keeping it. We put that back on the tax roll. If we can get out of the probation building, put it back on the tax roll. Those, unfortunately, we're in the real estate business, whether we want to be or not, but we're not hands-on. We turn that over to a third party to take care of for us. So, thank you.
Thank you. And just trying to speak primarily to the amount of moving parts that we would have on a deal. And as we develop them, we'll be able to see what that JDL parcel would have. I did want to speak to Commissioner Lynchard's comments, and I agree that we're not going to have a site determined on Thursday. I didn't look at that as, these are the final 3 sites either. I looked at this as an opportunity for us to start, narrowing it down. And because, as has been mentioned here today and many times before, we've been going at this a little while. So as we try to go at it again this time, trying to get the location. That's the first thing that we got to get locked down. And so this will help us get closer to that. And if there's no objection to the motion that's been put forward, the recommendation, the directing of staff for Thursday, then I will make that motion without objection. Hearing no objection, that item is moved to Thursday. We will now take a 10-minute break and be back at 10:40. Okay, call the meeting back to order. And with item number 3, Tony?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have a extension of the agreement on encroachment with the Navy that would extend this agreement through September 30 of 2021. I don't know if the county attorney has any additional information or not.
Roy?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. There is an additional item which we may want to bring back to the board on Thursday. We have an agreement with the Navy, disagreement with the Navy in regard to the encroachment. There's also an agreement with the Navy in regard that has as a partner the state of Florida that has funding that will be expiring at the end of September. It's for the same purpose, and the state has not been able to efficiently utilize those funds, so the Navy would like to add Santa Rosa County as a partner in that agreement on the same terms and conditions that exist. We have not had a chance to receive and review the proposed amendment, but I may be able to. The Navy's working on trying to get it to us so that we could deal with that on Thursday. And there's over $500,000 worth of funds that we don't want to expire, or the Navy doesn't want to expire. So
More money is better. That's a good thing.
that's always my thought.
All right. Do you think you can get us the information we need by Thursday? You feel good about it?
We hope so.
Okay.
We will make it available to the board as soon as we receive it. It's coming from the Navy. And those things do come fairly slowly from the Navy.
Okay. If there's no questions or comments from the board, then including the additional information about the state funding that would be available for Thursday, then I will move this item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. Item number 4, Tony?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting, I believe Commissioner Parker had asked about what it would cost to advance the merit increase for FY18 a couple of months. That was brought about by the discussion with the Sheriff's Department on those raises that had been allocated for sworn officers. I've provided in your backup that information to advance for all non-sworn personnel for all entities, commission and constitutionals would be $157,143 for the months of August and September.
Commissioner Parker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I saw this as a just as much of a need as it would be an opportunity to reward our employees. I know we proudly gave the Sheriff's Office sworn officers 10% pay raise to try to help the sheriff with retention. According to our Human Resource Director, Devan Cook, in the last 12 months, we've lost 43 BOCC employees through the avenue of resignation, and we've had 6 retire. And one of those 6 that retired, I know, I'm sure you all knew better than me, was one of our very experienced building inspectors, John Ballou, who left for better pay. We've also, lost within the last 12 months a 911 operator, dispatcher that went to the Sheriff's Office for better pay since they're a step above. Most notably recently we lost Brandon in our IT department. I think he'd been here almost 10 years, went to Escambia County for better pay. I understand we're going to do the pay comparison, but I've talked with several, information I've got is several department heads have basically already done this research, and we are losing people, and especially like the IT. I mean, that's a huge hit to lose people with that many years experience that are leaving for better pay. Tony and Jane had assured me that this is not going to set us in any sort of negative light to be able to go ahead and advance these merit raises to get them to where they could start in August versus October 1 if we are to approve the, basically, I think we've all expressed that we wanted to bring the merit raises then. So with the fact that we did it for those sheriff's deputies to address the need of retention, which I believe is what the sheriff's main reasoning was for that, I'm requesting the board do that for retention of our county employees. So with that, I'd be prepared to make a motion that we move that to Thursday to move forward to go ahead and do that unless anybody on the board wants to have a comment.
Commissioner Lynchard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of clarification, this does include all the constitutional officers as well?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Commissioner Lynchard asking that because that was a concern that had been brought to my attention. I'm going to support this, having worked Thursday and Friday hand in hand with some of our folks from Public Works and knowing how hard everybody works for Santa Rosa County that comes under that flag. I'm wholeheartedly going to support this, especially knowing it won't affect our budget. I will, however, caution my fellow commissioner, Commissioner Parker, to please, when you send out an email, send it straight to the county administrator. I got copied on this, and I don't want anything to appear like a violation of sunshine law.
Noted, I appreciate it.
I'm fine with the reason behind this recommendation. I think that we had money that was being returned from the sheriff's office, and that's what was funding getting them the raises earlier. I'm wondering how we know, taking money from savings, general reserves, reserve for contingencies, just wondering if staff can give me some assurances. Is this in any way similar to what we did with the sheriff? We had funding that we knew was going to be returned. We weren't taking it out of reserves, out of our savings account, if you will, to pay for those increases ahead of the new fiscal year. And I wouldn't be comfortable with taking it from reserves to do this. So can you give me some idea of where the money would be coming from if it's not from reserves?
Well, two things. Obviously, the money the sheriff returns to us or any constitutional officer or the board lapse rate, that goes into unrestricted reserves. So that'd be first. We've not done an analysis of our any total lapse. I'm not. Don't know that I could tell you off the cuff the total lapse that might be available from last year. But even if that's a concern, I think in the backup I mentioned that we actually still have money in our reserve for contingencies in FY17 that we could allocate if that's what the board chose to do. Hopefully that answers your question.
So it would be money that would be going back into reserves, similar to the $300,000 that the sheriff was going to return. It wasn't something that we necessarily budgeted off of. I guess it's just something we need to be careful of, and this is coming from the person that made that recommendation with the sheriff's raises to get them early, and that probably led us to where we are right now. The interest in having the conversation for the sheriff's raises in January, earlier in the budget process, was to give staff and those who are responsible for creating the budget the most possible lead time by getting clear policy direction from the board. as you're developing your budget. And I also felt that that recommendation was made in a fiscally responsible manner, asking for the sheriff to provide around $200,000 in operational savings, and the $1.6 million that we were hardwired to use for capital for his squad cars would not be required because it would come from the loss. So you take the 1.6 and 200,000 in operation savings, there's the amount of money that would give him his raises. And that would have been fine if that had taken place to start the fiscal year. And then I made the mistake of making the recommendation that we offer that early. And I can see now that that can provide some issues possibly. What if, God forbid, we were to have a storm and we needed to have overtime or we had additional expenses? We're basically saying that we guarantee that for the next couple of months, we know that we're not going to run over on any of our budgeted labor, when the reality is we could find ourselves through an unforeseen instance utilizing this budgeted amount. And what we're doing is we're spending the money that we believe will be surplus. If all goes well and our budget numbers are accurate, then this would be a surplus and it doesn't have a budget impact. But if there is something that happens that we would require to expend those monies and even a little bit more, then it's definitely a dangerous precedent to set. And I think the board should consider, if we're going to approve this, that we add language to it that would say in the future, any merit increases would take effect with the next year's fiscal year budget, that they would not be coming out early. Because I could see where, what if next time it's June or May, or, how far are we going to back this up, and what would the implications be? So I just think it's something that we definitely need to consider as we move forward. Commissioner Salter?
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you. I know in companies, corporations, it's unheard of to one individual to give merit increases other than at the appropriate time of the year when the new budget starts. I think it sets a bad precedent, as you said. Kind of get into a popularity contest. So I would encourage us to refrain from doing these type things. Build them in the budget. When the new budget kicks in, so do the merit increases. Thank you.
Okay, given those comments, I'll go back to Commissioner Parker for your motion.
Thank you. I'd make a motion that we move this to Thursday for approval for the merit increases to take effect for the pay period that would begin July 30, 2017. I'll make it without objection.
Hearing no objection, the item is moved. Item number 5, Tony?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Booth contacted me about painting the mural that's there, or touching it up, I believe was what she, and I believe she's here. It really brought about a larger issue. I think that what I told her was I didn't think the touch-up of the mural would be a problem, as much as I wanted to be sure that we didn't, in another meeting or two, have a conversation about the building condition and that sort of thing. So I thought I really needed to talk about the building as much as the mural. In your backup, and we'll get to the mural part, but I want to be sure we approve that if that's what the board desires. I will go ahead and say the building is in poor condition. You see some pictures in there. There is storage in that building. The supervisor of elections has storage. Clerk of the court, they have some storage in there. We have some, a little bit of stuff. I believe it may be all the clerks. And then we have this outstanding lease with Arts and Culture, which is sort of maybe or maybe not in effect. They've not, I don't think they've been paying the nominal amount annually on that, but they don't have a lot of stuff there. They have a stage and maybe a few other things there as well. In talking with the clerk's office, of course, they have some things in there that can be disposed of. The supervisor of elections office has a 2-year retention on certain things like ballots. I think they have to have the physical documents maintained. My recommendation is that we consider declaring that building surplus and dispose of that building and direct staff to look for other alternatives for county storage needs to be worked on over the next budget cycle. And we've talked about a storage building over the last probably 5 or 6 years. We just need to get serious about that. In that conversation, we really do need to those that we provide storage for, whether it be clerk, supervisor, or our own, we need to be also serious about making sure that we're doing as much as we can with electronic storage, and that when we do have physical records, that they're being destroyed when they can, because we all have a garage or a storage space of our own that we know how it's easy just to have a place to put something and then it kind of out of sight, out of mind. So we want to be careful about just building space that we may not have to have a large facility for. We also, and we'll bring it back based on the board's direction, we also have the Cronley lease out at the industrial park that the Sheriff's Department is currently using that for storage. I think that lease runs another 3 years or maybe 4, that possibly could establish some space out there to move any small amount of storage that we might need to accommodate from the Whittle building.
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chairman Cole?
I wholeheartedly agree that we condense what we can. My wife's going to have a heart attack because I'm probably one of the biggest pack rats around, but we condense all this. If you look at these pictures, a lot of this looks like just junk that's got put there and not used, just convenience, like Administrator said, out of sight, out of mind. We asked the clerk, we asked the supervisor to condense this down as much as possible, vacate that building, hopefully move to the location we have with Cronley at the sheriff. I think if everybody condenses down some, we don't need to build a new building or spend any money there, just spend a little bit of money and time moving it, and then put that building up for public auction or for sale, however we deem necessary to put that back on the tax rolls. So I support that wholeheartedly and willing to put that in a form of motion if we need to.
Mr. Cooey?
I certainly would appreciate it if the commissioners would start selling things. I know there was a little bit of discussion earlier. If we're not using it anymore, we need to sell it. I think that could be with the right kind of purchase there, that could probably turn into a nice place, certainly a good location. But let's quit holding on to things until they don't have any value left in them, and then we get in a situation like this. When Hunter Walker was still here, we were on our way to build a $5 million storage facility. That, as far as I knew, that was in the budget. I thought we had already built one, but apparently we haven't. You know, there was discussion at that time when this building was moved to another entity that we're speaking of here, that a record storage facility was going to be built. However, apparently that never happened. But at any rate, I would encourage this board to please sell this building to someone who will love it and take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree that, you know, this is kind of like the butterfly house. The thing's reached the end of its usable life, so why put a roof on top of something that isn't going to be a long-term solution for us? Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff Snow, Milton City Council. I would just, there's a couple of different ways y'all can go, as Mr. Cole mentioned. I just at least like to go ahead and get the mural done, depending on, in a timely manner, unless you're going to tear it down. I'd appreciate that.
Again, the purpose of, we'll get back to the mural. I see no reason not to recommend we go ahead and allow the arts and culture to touch up the mural. It's just a matter of, there's a bigger issue. I didn't want to catch them by surprise when we're at some meeting in the future talking about getting rid of the building, so.
Great, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Councilman Snow, and I would be in support of touching up the mural as presented as well. There was another idea that was brought forward from the United Way, and you know, you start looking at what DOT would be willing to pay for the building as part of the possible 4-laning, and would we be interested in using any of those funds to put toward the construction of a new project or possibly some wetlands mitigation. The area there behind the United Way building, if we were looking at doing some type of storage facility, that could be a good location. I think currently, as you said, we have the clerk's stuff, we have supervisor of elections is putting some stuff in there as well. So just something else to consider when we look at a location of a future facility. If we're paying rent to Tahar and Cronley for a facility, and folks have already talked about long-term solutions that maybe they would be more interested in owning it, that might be an option for us to get a facility that would be built close to the users, and it would be something that would be a long-term solution that we would own, something to consider.
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman Cole.
I agree. I don't care for rent, but I think we're obligated for 3 more years with Tahar and Connolly, so that'd be a good, quick fix to get out of this building and get it on the market. So.
Hopefully, the construction of a storage facility would not take as long as a courthouse. And but if it does, then 3 years is not going to be near enough time to plan to get that done. But just something to think about, Tony, as you move forward solving that problem.
Yes, we would just plan to bring back maybe, and we can include that on Thursdays if you wish. We'd just include the direction for staff to begin to develop an interim and then a long-term storage needs solution, and the Whittle building disposition, as well as the mural touch-up.
Yeah, and I'd like to see you include taking a look at the property there. I know there's wetlands concerns and that may impact the decision and the cost, but I think it definitely is a great suggestion that was brought forward and warrants taking a look at.
Sure, we can put that in as one of the solutions.
Okay, so the recommendation for Thursday would be to direct staff to begin the process of delivering a county warehouse building, and also to approve the touch-up of the mural of the existing Whittle building.
And if you include declaring that building surplus, and then we can determine the best course of action for disposition of it.
Okay, and the third option, or the third item, would be to declare the Whittle building surplus, begin that process as well. All right, so we have those 3 items. They would be moved to Thursday without objection. Hearing no objection, they are moved. Item 6, downtown redevelopment, Tony.
Yes, Mr. Watkins is here in your backup, and we may have an overhead that we can pop up there, but Brian had asked about their interest, the city's interest in a couple of things down there to help with a festival area where currently some of that is grassed and vacant. Some of that, they have some restroom needs there, handicap accessible restroom needs. We have a building there that our Veterans Memorial Plaza office is. Some of the building is not in use. They feel like that they could develop it into a portion of it into handicap restrooms. I believe we have a ramp already at that building. They also have a plan to do some, as you see in the backup, they have a plan to do some additional drainage features on that parcel, change up the parking a little bit, I believe, to add some parking and maybe additional parking on some of the property they've purchased, just to enhance the area to really make that a better and more attractive location for festival, other special type events. If you have any questions, Mr. Watkins is in the audience.
Thank you, and I think it's clear that the city is trying to move forward with improving things in the downtown area and making it more accessible. It's hard for me to have the courthouse conversation and then see this reality. I still believe that that was the best location, but it's obvious that the city is moving on, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't bring that up during the earlier conversation about sites, because it seems like we're getting clear direction from the mayor and the city council that courthouse, judicial center is not an option down there anymore. But Brian is here. If any members of the board have questions about this, I'm definitely in support of it. Good morning, Mr. Watkins.
Good morning. Brian Watkins, City of Milton, 6738 Dixon Street. Again, I think this is just, we're trying to move forward. We'd love to, there's been long been a desire from, I think, all of our citizens from Milton County, everywhere, to have restroom facilities available in the downtown area around the Veterans Memorial and the Riverwalk Park. I think if we move forward with this proposal, we'd be able to provide, I think those restrooms inside the Veterans Memorial would provide restrooms for everybody during normal times during the day, all week, and then during times of special events and things like that. What we'd like to do is use them as the handicap accessible restrooms. The city has moved forward to basically purchasing a mobile restroom trailer that we would pull in to support non-handicapped restroom facilities downtown. So I think that would give us a better opportunity. And the adjustments to what we have referred to as the festival area, would like to utilize some of the area that the county does own down there that is now just vacant property. I think in this case it'll be upgrades to, we're seeing sidewalks, curb and gutter, fill, compaction, and stormwater improvements, everything in the area down there that I think would make it work for us for festival areas, River Fest, Scratch Ankle, arts and culture events and things like that. So, I mean, that's really what we're pushing for, is trying to move forward and make some improvements to the downtown area.
Well, thank you for bringing that forward. Vice Chairman Cole?
Through the chair to city manager. So the area you're showing for stormwater retention is currently that low mucky area?
Yes, sir.
So, okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Salter?
Mr. Chairman, I support this. I know that our Veterans Memorial Foundation, we've used this for several years to conduct the memorial business. Mr. Nesson and I talked about adding these restrooms. It'd be a benefit not only to the city and your festivals, but Veterans Day, Memorial Day. It enhance all the programs down there, so I support it. Thank you.
Looks like you got all the yeses you need. And just as an aside, I want to say that I think you do a phenomenal job for the city, and that you always present things in a way that is very easy to understand. We understand the why, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and just want to say an absolute joy and professional to work with. And thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Ask that we move this to Thursday's agenda. Tony, sorry, would you?
Yes, I was just going to say that if you move this conceptually to this agenda, then we'll be bringing back an interlocal once we have that action.
Okay. So action for Thursday, or? Yeah, okay. I'd ask that we move this to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. On to item number 7, the building site plan for the Santa Rosa County Fair. Tony?
Yes, in your backup, you have the, Mr. Hawley has submitted the request for approval. If you recall, our interlocal agreement or our lease agreement with the Fair Association requires that they kind of keep us abreast of additional improvements on their property. This is the latest request to make these upgrades to the facility out there. And if you have any questions, Kyle is in the audience.
Okay, have the information in your backup. Prepared to move the item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. On to number 8. and I'm afraid to read it. Directional signage, Navarre.
Yeah, yes. I was afraid to put it on there.
That definitely falls under the expression too soon.
The National Seashore has requested our approval for signage, really the signage on Highway 98, directing folks off of from Navarre to the National Seashore would really not require our approval, but they've included the two signs for 98, and then the one on our highway there before you, between the boat ramp and the Tom Thumb, they've requested to add a sign there that says Gulf Islands National Seashore, Santa Rosa area, Opal Beach. And so if the board would concur with that, we would notify them that they could place that sign in that area.
I'm just curious, you say that they don't require approval from this board to put these signs up?
The ones on Highway 98 would be on FDOT right away. I would not think, I'm not aware of a requirement we would have for them to put up signs on FDOT property.
Okay. Just curious, have they never had signs up before, or is this something that maybe they had up, through Ivan and they were disappeared, or?
I don't know that answer. I just know that they had indicated that they had received a lot of questions or maybe visitors that were coming from the east that maybe missed that opportunity that went further down to get back to the same spot. So maybe it was just anecdotal information they received from their visitors that were coming from the east.
Well, the two on Highway 98, if they feel that there are people still walking the earth that don't know how to use Google Maps or some type of way to type it into their phone, that I guess that's fine. As far as it relates to on the island itself, we just removed 300 signs there, and I just don't see, I find it hard to believe that when somebody gets to that stop sign, especially with the number of visitors that we heard about that National Seashore gets, it doesn't seem like they need any help getting people down there. I just don't, I would prefer not to have another sign added to the island. We just spent so much time getting stuff eliminated. So if FDOT wants to allow the ones on 98, as you say, we can't do anything about that, but the one on the island, all things being equal, I would prefer them not to put up a sign there. If they want to have directional signage within the National Seashore, that's fine. But that would be my recommendation, to support or stand, not oppose the ones on Highway 98, but that the one on 399, I don't see what benefit we would be providing there. Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I respectfully disagree. I know we have cleaned up a lot, but this being a National Seashore gives us some national, to me, a national attention. These signs, we see them all over our country, and a lot of people like to go get those stamps on their national passport, national parks passport. So if it was another type of sign, I would agree with you, but this giving us the perception of this being another national park that we all are so proud of in this country, and I feel like we really ought to consider having that one put up.
Thanks. Would you like to comment? Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Hi there, Barbara Albrecht, 1528 East Brainerd. I really believe you should have a sign. This is a feather in your cap. Thank you, Commissioner Cole, because the National Seashore is such an amazing area. You really want people to know that it exists. And as far as your comment about not, everybody has a Google Earth document or an iPhone, I represent the Brim Fishermen Association. Many of our members are up in their 80s and 90s. They don't have iPhones. They depend on a newsletter that they get in the snail mail, which you probably don't get anymore, but a lot of people get their information from different avenues. So while I believe signage can be overwhelming and too much, I also believe that this is a sign, this is a feather in your cap. You want that connection to the National Seashore. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioner Salter.
Mr. Chairman, I concur with Commissioner Cole.
Recommend that we move the item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. Item number 9, draft RFP for NES Whiting Field capacity review. Have the information in your backup. Have no comments or questions. I'm prepared to move the item.
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chairman Cole.
we may have to lean on Commissioner Salter for this. I don't recall us ever having to do this before. I could be wrong, could have forgot, but if I could ask through the chair to Commissioner Salter, have we done this in the past? And if so, is this price fall in accord to what we've been paying? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Cole, we have not done capacity studies in the past. We've done other similar type projects for NAS Whiting Field. There's a lot of chatter coming out of Washington, D.C. that there will be another BRAC-based round closure coming probably 2020, 2021. Once the BRAC order is issued, all military bases will have a gag order placed on them. They will not be able to share any kind of data with the community, with the county, with a group that's representing that base. So we want to try to work with our Florida military group and get ahead of the game. So if that gag order hits, we'll already have the data that we need.
Yeah, I'm 100% in support of this. I think it's a good proactive step and can only give us more information that we can use at National Association of Counties Defense Support Initiative when we're going to Tallahassee and Washington trying to advocate on behalf of what the impact of this base means. And I would ask, do we want to consider reaching out to Hurlburt and seeing about 75% of the folks that are at Hurlburt live in the Navarre District 4 area? Is this something that we want to maybe look at the Hurlburt Field area as well, and the impact that it has? Commissioner Salter.
Mr. Chairman, I would certainly support something in the future, but I think for this particular project, we limited it to Whiting Field. I know we have Pete Gandy with us, who is the immediate past chairman, I think, of DSI. And Hubbard and Eglin, they're going to be doing a lot of different things. If they want our support, then they certainly can ask us for it.
Okay. Pete, good morning. I'm prepared to move the item, and if it just would, if you would see about the possibility, maybe bring it back to us of looking at what that impact would be with Hurlburt, or making sure that we have like information as the possible BRAC comes upon us.
I'll be happy to do that, Mr. Chairman. I think, as Commissioner Salter mentioned, what we're really trying to get moving today is looking at the possibility of additional missions for NAS Whiting Field, since it's right here in our county. We can look at the others as well, but I think our main charge right now is looking at the opportunity for Whiting. We've done a concept paper on this in the past, and what we need is we've had a lot of changes that have taken place since that concept paper was initially done. We've had the Grassy study that was completed. We've had the conversion of the aircraft at Whiting with a new different type of airplanes. We've had the Joint Strike Fighter come into the region now, and using some of the airspace and field here at Santa Rosa County. If you recall back to BRAC 1995, there was a recommendation from the Secretary of the Navy at that time to consolidate all primary pilot fixed-wing training for the Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard here, which would mean relocating 2 squadrons out of Corpus Christi. Nothing happened with that recommendation. There was opposition to it at the time by the Chief of Naval Operations, so that recommendation was shelved. And the next BRAC, they're going to be looking at where are economies of scale, where can we actually save dollars. We believe that now would be the time to have that information ready to make the case and to bring that back up and look at possibly relocating those squadrons to Whiting.
Thank you. Don't need to tell you what kind of impact that would be. It'd be huge.
It would be.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Salter?
Mr. Chairman, I think what staff needs from us is to recommend approval of release of the draft for RFP for NAS Whiting Field capacity review, and also ask staff to look at the potential funding coming out of repaid REPI funds or economic development, either one. And I think either one of those will fit.
Yeah, I think we looked at it. I think the REPI funds will work.
I agree. Good suggestion. It's budget neutral. Okay. As laid out by Commissioner Salter, recommend that we move this item to Thursday's agenda. Without objection, hearing no objection, the item is moved. Thank you for what you're doing, for being here today. Item number 10 is non-emergency medical transportation permit discussion. Have the information in your backup. And Tony, I'll go to you. Do you want to provide any backup or just? All right, go right ahead. Name and address for the record, please.
Okay. My name's Mickey Smith. I'm from Wheel Care. Our address is in Mobile. This is our request to provide non-emergency medical transportation in Santa Rosa County. I noticed on the agenda that it's guided as non-medical transportation. I don't know that that makes a difference or not technically, but ours is non-emergency medical transportation. Non-emergency medical transportation, you all may know this, but Medicare funds go through the state AHCA, excuse me, Medicaid funds. The AHCA contracts with transportation brokers to provide medical transportation for its patients. The brokers hire companies like us to actually get the people to their appointments. We presently carry for a broker by the name of Access to Care. We have had another broker, MTM, contact us and tell us that they needed some help in Santa Rosa, Escambia, Okaloosa, and Walton counties. And so to be able to provide services for them, we're asking to be able to transport folks in Santa Rosa County. We're not really looking for, we don't do private pay, or we're not really doing nursing home type thing. We are only operating through the work that comes through the transportation brokers.
Okay, thank you. When we processed or approved the agenda, we made sure to add that word emergency in there. So thank you for that correction. We've got that noted for the record. If you would, please, and this goes for anyone, I should have mentioned this earlier, please make sure to get a speaker's form filled out before you leave today if you address the board. And if there's no questions or comments from members of the board, Vice Chairman Cole, do you have anything, or go ahead?
Through the chair. Again, sir, what's your name?
Mickey Smith.
Okay, are you the signature?
It's Michael B. Smith. I'm the one that made the application.
Okay, so you're the applicant's signature?
I'm sorry?
You're the signature on the application?
It's either mine or Rick Little, our owner.
Okay. And the only question I had is that I'm sure Roy will take care of it, make sure we get clarification on signatures and maybe printed also on there. And then it's managing members. That doesn't really tell me anything. I'd like to see on a contract. I'd just like to see.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
I said on where it just says it's managing members, I would just prefer to have those listed on the contract, signed
I
and
think
listed.
I did. Did I put
it just says
Patrick Little and Richard Taylor?
No, sir. Unless I'm missing something, it just has your signature, which, like mine, I can't read it.
Oh, I certainly.
And then it just says over here, it's managing members. If that's, kosher by law, then that's.
If you can't read it,
a
then
Roy
that's
question.
Mr. Little's signature, not mine.
All right. Well, if we could just clarify those items.
I will, tell me what you need me to do, and I'll do it.
Okay. Roy, if you'll get that.
If
We'll
you'll
take care
just-
of it.
If you'll just get in touch with me, Roy Andrews, the county attorney, we'll make sure.
Thank you.
I couldn't under.
If you'll get in touch with me, Roy Andrews, the county attorney.
Oh, okay.
We'll make sure the documents are.
Okay, great.
Okay.
I did have, I'm sorry, are there any other questions? I did have one question, and I guess I'll address anything as far as the requirements under the ordinance. I would go through Mr. Andrews.
That's
Okay,
correct.
super.
Do you have any other questions for the board?
I don't think so. I hope we're able to do some work over here.
Roy, you've had an opportunity to review the document, and you'll get together with him after this to satisfy Commissioner Cole's concerns?
I'll do so.
Okay. All right. Then prepared to move the item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. Thank you for being here today, Mr. Smith.
All right, thank you.
Item number 11, Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence Agreement. Tony?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is an annual pass-through agreement we do with this Florida agency, if you will. And so there's no fiscal impact to the county. We just act as the pass-through.
Okay, I would ask that we move this to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. Item number 12, Navarre Beach Vendors. Tony?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, over time, I think I probably individually talked with most of you over time about we get folks that are asking to provide some sort of vendor service on the beach. Not this board, but previous boards have had these type of inquiries in the past and have chosen not to get into the mobile vendor service in the way of what our neighbors do. The Escambia County, they don't allow this type of vendor other than through lease amendments, sublease agreements with those that have leases on the beach. That's essentially what we've done in the past. Is if someone wants to do something and they want to do a sublease with a current leaseholder, then they can work that through the leaseholder. We are getting enough of these inquiries, at least felt compelled to bring this to this sitting board for either ratification of a current policy, if you will, where we didn't entertain mobile vendors, or for this board to look at that and give us some direction relative to your thoughts on that.
Morning. If you would, name and address for the record, please. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. My name is Tamara Davis. I love lemonade. That is a true statement, and also the name of my mobile business. Thank you for having me this morning. I appreciate the opportunity. Quick little background. I moved into the Panhandle last year from Dallas, Texas, and when I first got here, I was over in Destin and took a spring break job driving an ice cream truck, in which I was able to go on 38 and hit all of the public beach accesses in order to serve ice cream to whoever wanted it. We also were able to go into certain of the condos, such as vacation condos, as well as watercolor. They allowed us to, go in and sell ice cream. We wouldn't stay more than 15 or 20 minutes, or however long the line was, before we would move on to the next location. And people that are there on vacation for a week at a time or more, they actually look forward to us coming every day. And I had one gentleman in particular ask me where I was and what took me so long to get here. His kids were running him crazy because they wanted ice cream. So fast forward, that was a spring break job only. Fast forward to now, I started my own business. Lemonade, just wanted to do something different and something simple. And in doing so, I started participating in various special events. I started at the Okaloosa Tri-County Fair. I've done Mardi Gras parades, set up at motorcycle and Harley Davidson, both in Fort Walton as well as over in Pensacola. And it just gives an opportunity to allow another type of business. Noticing on Navarre Beach in particular, there aren't a whole lot of options when it comes to being able to have certain types of foods or, you know, the way I see it, there are two opportunities here. Obviously, allowing a mobile vendor like myself to go to the various public beach access, sit for a short amount of time and continue forward. But there's also another opportunity to possibly have a central location where vendors like myself could be to give other additional options for refreshments and so forth to your visitors. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have of me.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Tamara. I'm going to open it up for board discussion at this time. Commissioner Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern is that we currently have the RFP out for pier operations, and I don't know if any aspect of the pier operations that are under consideration for proposal would contain similar operations, certainly in that pier parking area. So I'm hesitant to change the way we do things until we see the proposals that are going to come in for the pier. Because we've been operating under one set of rules to date. We have the RFP out on the street, and I don't know that we should change the rules in the midst of that process.
Vice Chairman Cole.
Well, two things. I agree with Commissioner Lynchard on this, that, you know, if, and agree with the county administrator, if somebody wants a lease you area and that already has a lease with the county and you get a sublease for their parking lot or something, and how I see this differs is with your ice cream truck, you kept moving. You weren't put in one location and staying there, where on this you would be. So I would support what the county administrator said. Let's continue that the way we're doing business now, which would be, you know, you go to a leasee now and get a sublease. My only question about this to the board is, how does this differ from and I was out of town, so please excuse me, but how does this differ from the lady we shut down that was doing snow cones?
Well, one of the differences was that was a commercial enterprise with no parking, and it was currently under a code enforcement, multiple code enforcement cases, and they were requesting a variance. I think what we'd be talking about here would in some ways be very similar. The board would be making a decision that we want to allow a commercial operation without any parking. And I think what Ms. Tamara was mentioning with what you did in Walton County, that wasn't what you're currently doing here, going from public access to public access. When you were doing that on 30A in Walton County, did you have permission of the Walton County Commission?
Yes, the owner of the ice cream business has been in business for like 22 years, and she has Destin, and again, I'm not so familiar with this area that much yet, but I know that she already had permissions to be able to do all of these locations. It was something that has been grandfathered. I think in Destin, they don't even allow mobile vendors anymore because of all the traffic and what have you, but because she's grandfathered in. But she did get permission from the various counties. She paid, you know, the annual fee, whether it be business tax and what have you, to be able to run those routes. And she had even exclusivity in going into watercolor. So there are opportunities to get people along the beach strip, whether there's, you know, separate condos that would allow us to come in. Some say yes, some say no. We couldn't go in Seaside, as an example. So it just really kind of depends on the individual business owners, but my thought was doing something similar, going down one side of the beach and then just turn around and come back, and then you're out and you're done for the day. That's the way we did it.
I think, thank you for that. The reason I ask about that is something that was brought up during that zoning board meeting when I think it was Commissioner Parker said something to the effect of, you know, what do we want Navarre Beach to look like? And we are getting more visitors now, and because of that, you're going to have more folks like yourself that are interested in trying to capitalize on that and having your small business be stood up. The issue that I have is, do we want to allow mobile food vendors up and down Navarre Beach, or in areas where, let's say, we allow you to start stopping into the different public access points and conducting business, and let's say somebody else wants to start doing that business. How many are we going to allow? Or I don't fundamentally agree with the way Walton County might handle it, where they pick one business over another and allow that. I think we need to have a long-term vision and a solution, and we need to look at crafting a policy or developing a policy of this board of how we want to handle this, especially on the island. Before, we're getting more requests now, and this is not something that I would be comfortable with. I envision that Navarre would not have permanent or mobile food trucks selling different items in parking lots or in public access points, or just, vacant pieces of property where they, are able to conduct business. I would like to have it to where if we have a commercially zoned piece of property, that we have a building that's constructed and we have business operating out of it, and we have all of the codes met, and we have market conditions dictating what is and is not going to be successful. And instead of this hodgepodge fruit salad of businesses operating wherever they can squeeze into a piece of property with an accessory structure, or snow cones parked in the corner of the lot requesting that they go to a zero lot line. And we just haven't provided a lot of direction on that to this point, but I think we need to. And this is something that, for me, I would not be in support of. And it has nothing to do with you yourself.
Fully understand.
Just I'm afraid of, or fearful what this policy would lead to. And so those are my comments on it. Commissioner Parker?
Yeah, I appreciate, I tell you, it was kind of like it's still sharp when Commissioner Cole uses the term, we shut down the snow cone business. The sad part is we're not trying to be anti-small business. I tell you, just like I told her, that's the entrepreneurial spirit, and I appreciate it. But I will say, and I meant what I said when I told the lady, it's not that I don't, that anything she provides is negative, but I'm trying to look at the long-term value of all those property owners out there, and which, as long as we can get that property value up, then translates into favorable for the people in my district, because now we have more tax revenue coming in, and it's better. And I recently went down to South Florida, and I'll tell you, purposely drove scenic routes to get off of the interstate and saw many towns, and stopped in at even some of their peer areas, and we could equate it to basically very similar to what you see in Pensacola, boardwalks and establishments. And there's no way that any of those counties that are more successful than us, as far as from the terms of, I guess if you want to say success, probably wasn't the best word, but population and revenue generation and tourism, would stand for that. They wouldn't stand for portable buildings to be plopped up along their beach frontage or carts or anything. And I mean, I know it costs more, and the sad part is it kind of keeps a lot of people, myself included. I couldn't afford to go buy beachfront property right now and develop it, or lease it and develop it. But I think when we look at long-term at what we want for the county, so I just kind of wanted to put that on comment. It's not about that we're trying to close down small business, because, my God, I think everybody up here pretty much is small business owners. But if we want to have that nice beach that we're trying to bring people to, I think we've got to look at aesthetics of it. And so I'm going to stand beside the policy of, trying to keep it to where it would be nice, permanent structures out there, And as like Commissioner Lynchard stated, I mean, I supported the basically open-ended RFQ for long-term leases, hoping that we'd get somebody that would come do a lot of investment and build that out. And if they had a similar product in there and they had spent millions of dollars building a business and we allowed somebody to do it in the parking lot without the overhead or the tax capture, I mean, then we're kind of cutting their knees out from under them. So for that standpoint, I mean, I want you to know we support small business, but when we're dealing with the beach and just trying to plan out the future, you know, I just couldn't support it.
So the question that I have then would be, is there a county property where there is going to be some kind of concentration of foods and beverages available? Is that in the plan in the future?
See, that's where I believe market forces will dictate that, and that there is commercial property available on the island that could be used for that purpose. And I think this is exactly how it should be, in that instead of picking winners and losers and allowing, you know, to be pro-small business, you have to try to provide a level playing field wherever possible to where businesses can compete. And if also providing policies that are as equitable as possible throughout the county. You know, if we allow this here and we say that we're going to allow mobile food vendors on county-owned property, then any county-owned property, you might see that pop up at any number of parks or playgrounds, or, you know, you're at a para soccer game and you might have a food vendor pull up and start, you know, or we would get requests for that, and that would definitely cause an issue, considering some of the money that these youth development programs use, that they generate from the concession operations. In other words, this policy decision wouldn't just be specific for the beach. Would I love to see coffee and ice cream and different retail and rental operations and more restaurants on Navarre Beach? Absolutely. And it's coming. The number of visitors are there. The number of requests are there. It's hopefully going to see some action with the proposal that we have out now. But I don't think the solution is allowing something like this for maybe some short-sighted relief in exchange for what it would mean long-term. And I certainly I can appreciate the interest in what you're trying to do. There is a need to be serviced. But for me personally, as the representative of that district, and I've heard from leaseholders as well on this issue, and I think from the folks in District 4 that they're pretty clear that this is not something that they would be in support of seeing. They definitely want more restaurants, but I don't think that they want mobile food cart vendors on county property or in and out of public access areas. So if there's any additional comments from members of the board, if not, then Vice Chairman Cole?
Just for clarification, so her or any other vendor could go to Juana's or any of these locations, Steve Herring, anybody that is currently leasing a piece of commercial property, and get a sublease from them to sell on their property, or are you ruling that out also?
Well, the current proposal, or the current policy that we have with the county, is my understanding, is that you have to have, if the county has a lease with an entity, much like the pier. We had, I think it was Kona Ice, they had a sublease agreement with the pier. That was not approved by the county, and we ultimately did not allow them to operate. That's what I mean by being business friendly. We've got to be equitable, so we're not going to allow him to set up shop, but we are going to allow this snow cone place to operate illegally or out of compliance with the code, or we're going to allow somebody else to operate. So I feel as though if somebody wants to enter into a sublease agreement, we already have a mechanism in place to do that. They would need to bring that to the board, and the board would decide if they want to allow that operation.
Good, just clarification. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, thank you for your time today.
Thanks. That would be an option for you as one of the previously identified businesses that has a lease with the county. You may be able to engage with them to put in a request for a sublease that they would want to bring forward.
I was told that when I went over to the other office, and that's kind of hard to find, but that's why I'm here now.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there is, do we need to have a board action? Do I need to have action for Thursday, or just this item would not move to Thursday? Or do I need to make a motion to deny the request?
I think, well, we have those two vendor requests. We probably should just go ahead and make some form of a motion that we would notify those that the board chose not to entertain. I can handle it however you might desire.
Okay, I would make a motion that we deny the request for the mobile lemonade cart and the popsicle vending cart. I would do so without objection. Hearing no objection, those requests are denied. Item 13, Gulf Environmental Benefit Fund project submittal. Tony?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have some additional information in your backup that related to, I believe FWC had contacted our offices about, the Grants Department about an additional, what they thought would be a great project for the road that enters to Escribano Point Wildlife Management Area, for that to be considered as a project and entered into the portal. We had previously submitted that, and the board had approved three projects for submittal: the prop scar restoration, sediment assessment and removal from Santa Rosa canals, and septic to sewer conversion on Tom King Bayou. This would just be a fourth project that staff is looking for the board to authorize submittal of that.
Okay, any board discussion? Commissioner Lynchard?
Just real quick, I think this would be a fantastic project. It would open up access to Escribano Point to a lot of people who currently can't get down there because it is a dirt road. And Escribano Point, for people who haven't been out there, is a fantastic destination in Santa Rosa County. It is old Florida, beautiful water. Probably not last week after all the rains. It's kind of coffee colored, but I fully support this. I think it would be great to get that paved out there.
Absolutely agree. Commissioner Salter?
Mr. Chairman, my only comment would be, let's be very cautious of OLF Choctaw. My question would be, does the county own that road, or does Eglin?
The county has a long-term lease easement on a portion of that property with some restrictions on it. For one thing, it's subject to being closed at any time by the Air Force if it's mission sensitive. But yeah, we do have a document that gives us some interest in the property.
I agree with Commissioner Lynchard, but just be cautious to make sure we understand who owns that easement, what might be some type of long-term condition on it, and hopefully this will not create any type of lighting entertainment around OLF Choctaw. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Cole?
100% agree with what I've heard, especially the lighting part, because when I first got on this board, Marty Martin loaded new commissioners up in a SAR helicopter and took us around and explained how this particular runway duplicates carrier landings as far as light infiltration and not having that, so it represents a carrier out at sea with no lighting around it. So my concern, and perhaps we ought to include it in the assessment that we approve for BRAC, is perhaps the effect this would have of people coming in and out of there at night when they're doing flight ops. That'd be my concern. That's the only thing. I don't want to start putting lighting down there and improving that area.
The easement expressly prohibits utilities down that road.
But what I'm getting at is if they're flying night ops and you've got people driving in and out of there with just the headlights of the car, we may want to include that in our assessment. So.
Okay. Good discussion. Would move approval of this item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. On to the engineer's report. Good morning, Roger. Take it away, sir.
Thank you. Item number 1 is a discussion of the low bid from Empire Truck Sales in the amount of $122,707 for a commercial water truck for Central Landfill. Environmental Department budgeted funds from the Central Landfill Enterprise Capital account in this year's budget. And we're recommending low bid.
It's gone through the normal process. Recommendation to accept the low bid. Would move approval of this item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. Item number 2.
Item number 2 is the lease agreement with Cougar Oil for a 1,000-gallon fuel tank at Central Landfill. Currently, we are running a fuel truck off from the landfill to Public Works Yard, requiring a hazmat certification for both the vehicle and the operator. Cougar Oil is offered at no cost and provide the fuel at the same cost as they're providing for Public Works.
Any questions from members of the board? If not, prepared to move this item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. Item 3.
3 is a discussion of a quote from Beard Equipment Company in the amount of $15,523.88 for a complete undercarriage overhaul for the leased John Deere 850K bulldozer by Central Landfill, and we're recommending approval.
This is the blocking and tackling of local government, folks.
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman Cole.
Question through the chair, Roger. Roger, if we're leasing this, why can't we just turn it in and get a new piece of equipment rather than?
Because it's within the lease term.
What?
It's still within the lease term. We know we lease equipment 3 to 4 years, depending on which one. And this is all part of the lease agreement.
The where, because we got a compactor coming up here, next thing, and I want to make sure that, just have to have an understanding why we're fixing a piece of leased equipment instead of just,
Yeah, it's
this
repair and maintenance.
is all wearable items that we knew going into the lease.
It's just like replacing brakes on the leased equipment. I mean, we wear it out, and so we're just repairing it.
Yeah, brakes don't cost $15,000. I wish it did.
Yeah,
All right,
and the dozers are $500,000. We understand, yes.
All right, just
order of magnitude. This is within the lease agreement in terms of
Okay,
conditions.
thank you.
Commissioner Parker.
Well, while we're on that, because I was going to ask about the trash compactor, but I know, because I've sat and talked with Mr. Furman about running numbers on certain things, and I think every engineer is smarter than me for going through the math classes you did, but in cases like this, I mean, could you just give us the short on why we wouldn't just, I guess, purchase them versus the lease agreement, and we feel like it's still cheaper to do this, and then?
It goes back to what Commissioner Cole was alluding to. With the leased piece of equipment, its useful life is the 4 or 5 years for the lease term. And we would, for critical components, the compactor, that's $750,000 piece of equipment that you would buy and then own and then continue on, versus leasing it, and granted, it's slightly more expensive, but you have a critical piece of equipment that is relatively new and operating. Right now, for instance, our one lease compactor has been down for repairs. Now, it's under warranty, but it's out of operation. And our backup, that the county-owned compactor, went down. And suddenly, we were without a compactor, having to operate dozers on the face. You lose compactive effort by using dozers, but we can continue to operate and receive waste. So the trash dozers, these are pieces of equipment that wear out very rapidly because of all the materials coming in, box springs mattresses that come in, wind around the gears, ruin the seals, and so we're constantly maintaining these critical component pieces of equipment. Now, other equipment that is not as critical, the county does purchase through the bid process.
I guess one other sort of question would be, and I'm sure I thought of while you were talking, probably one of the other issues with if we purchased it, probably having a hard time retaining staff that could do those sort of repairs that we may be looking at, or?
Well, on a undercarriage, even if we own a county-owned dozer, we would be sending that out to Beard Equipment for a total redo from the environmental department's perspective. Now, I think Stephen may do his undercarriage, I'm not sure, in Road and Bridge, but certainly we would have sent that out. Our maintenance people do fluids changes, those sorts of things, change out pumps, hoses, all those, I won't say critical overhauls, but we don't rebuild motors and undercarriages.
And the good news is this enterprise, the landfill, operates at a cash flow positive nature and doing a very good job of managing that operation to where there is no general fund impact. We also, we want to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible with all the entities that we're operating, but this one is certainly providing benefit to the county. There's no further questions about item 3, then I'm prepared to move this item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. Item 4, Waste Management Franchise Area.
Yes, we're discussion of the award of the Waste Management South End Collection Franchise Agreement to Waste Pro. Santa Rosa County, as you know, a number of years ago advertised an RFP, and franchised the 2 southern areas of Santa Rosa County, and then 3 years ago did the northern end. We're coming up on renewal. We ask all 3 of our vendors, franchise haulers, to submit a letter of interest to renew the agreement at existing terms. The board took action and awarded Waste Pro and ECUA last meeting. Waste Management has says they were not interested in renewing under the same exact terms and conditions. We approached both ECUA and Waste Pro about taking that over under the same terms and conditions. You have in backup letters from both of the companies. Waste Pro has agreed to accept it exactly as it exists. ECUA asked for a modification to their agreement to bring it under their interlocal agreement. And staff has reviewed it, and for the items we know, recommend Waste Pro under the exact terms and conditions.
Thank you. This lines up ECUA and the Waste Pro to where we would be servicing, those 2 contracts would be up for bid again at the same time if we made this decision?
Yeah, we did that in the last renewal, got everybody aligned.
We're all lined up.
Are lined up, and essentially ECUA would be the north end franchise hauler, and Waste Pro would have the south end, and they're within 3,000 or 4,000 of the same number of households being serviced.
So because Waste Pro would be taking over that account, it wouldn't change the timing of it, is what I was getting at. Okay. All right. If there's no questions or comments, then I'm prepared to move the item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, that item is moved. Item number 5, the aforementioned trash compactor.
Yes, we're recommending the lowest price lease agreement meeting specification from Thompson Cat for a period of 48 months at $10,148.13 for a 2017 Caterpillar 826K waste compactor. We solicited requests from each of the 3. We had 2 vendors that responded, and we're recommending the low respondee is Thompson Cat.
There's no board discussion. I would move this item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. Item 6, excuse me.
Yes, each year we're required to submit to the state a detailed work plan for our arthropod control for 2017-2018. As you know, the state's budget starts July 1, and they've requested this amount, and we're recommending the state detailed work plan for arthropod control for 2017 for submission to the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services.
If there's no board discussion, I would move this item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. Item 7.
Item number 7, as you know, there's a brand-new Publix that's under construction at 5 Points area between Chumuckla Highway and Woodbine. There was an existing drainage easement going through that property. Publix has agreed and worked out through the 5 Points LLC to grant Santa Rosa County an emergency drainage easement. They will maintain the ditches, swells, and pipes at their expense, and in an emergency, should they not be able to do that, Santa Rosa County would perform the necessary repairs and bill it back to them. And we're recommending approval.
Any questions from members of the board? Please come forward. If you wouldn't mind, name and address for the record, please.
Again, my name is Deborah Apley. I live on Nora Avenue in Pace. Where are you going to drain this water to?
This water is going west under Woodbine and on to Escambia River.
Very good. Happy to hear that.
Thank you for your comments. There's no further comments from members of the board. I'm prepared to move this item. Oh, apologize. Please come on forward. No problem. Name and address for the record, please. Glad you're here.
Kim Carroll, West Spencer Field area. You've heard from me before. I was here at your last meeting. I want to address the flooding again over on West Spencer Field. There's fecal matter, human fecal matter coming onto my property and into my home. And you all know that makes us susceptible to hepatitis, whatever anybody has. It's not just horse fecal matter, it's human. There is no plumbing on that site. So when it rains, I don't know what they do, use buckets, toss it outside, I don't know. But I'm concerned because there's water coming into my home constantly. Every time it rains, we have a flood. Every time the flood comes into the yard and I can't drain it because it was built improperly and there was no substantial rise in my, excuse me, in my property. And the man who built it built us at the base of the V, and he started that whole entire subdivision. How he got away with it, I don't know. But I am concerned for diseases. And I think that if the county, I know you don't like to do this, but if the county bought my property, you can talk to, because I'm also in court with foreclosure. I can't remember his name. I think his name is Simon Simon. My house is gonna be foreclosed. That property is dangerous because it's all spewing out into the neighborhood, and there's kids constantly coming and playing in my driveway with this dissolved fecal matter from human beings playing in my driveway, and I have to scoot them out and say, you know, I just want you to know if you have any cuts on your feet, you need to go home and wash your hands and feet thoroughly with soap, and you really shouldn't be playing in that water because it's dangerous. And I'm the only one telling people, you know, these kids come to my house because I have water, and it's like a hose. It's coming up this high and it's active. I've got it on my phone, videography, if you'd care to see it. I've shared it with Mr. He's under, are you Don Salter? Oh, you are. He's under you, I believe. I can't think of his name. It starts with a B. Blaley? Anyway, I've shown it, and he didn't seem too concerned. He just was very interested, because everything in my shed gets flooded. I've gone through 2 lawnmowers, you know, nearly $400 a pop.
Tony, if, pardon me, ma'am, it's obviously a significant claim that's been made. What would be the county department that would investigate something like this?
Well, we'd find out. I think she probably talked to Mr. Bailey from the road department, and we can ask him about what he observed, and either the health department or our county code compliance department can check the area out for any sort of open violations of sewer. I guess everybody's on septic. Are you on sewer or septic?
City water,
You're on Pace Sewer?
yes.
We can get someone to check into it.
Okay, if you would, when you fill out a speaker's form, then make sure to get with staff so we can have somebody from the health department or the corresponding county employee to go out and take a look at what you're talking about.
Yes, there's culverts dug on each side of my house, but they're not going to be able to do the water sampling unless it's a flood, which could be happening again this, I guess there's 2 days of rain coming up. I missed half of what you said, I'm sorry. I have a disability and I don't ingest all the information I'm hearing all the time?
If you would, just make sure that we get a speaker's
Yes.
form filled out.
Yes, I did that.
So we can follow up with staff and have somebody come out,
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
okay? If there's no questions or comments from members of the board, then I'm prepared to move this item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. Item 8.
Item number 8 is a discussion of change order number 1 from Panhandle Grading and Paving in the amount of $23,781.45 for the installation of 3 taxiway hole short lighted markers. FAA has agreed to fund 90% of the project at $21,934, and the county would match the $23,8715 from the Peter Prince Enterprise account.
Okay, once again, this would be a general fund neutral request, and great job with leveraging on that, Roger. If there's no objection, I would move this item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. Item 9.
9 is a discussion of the construction contract award to Roberson Underground LLC in the amount of $1,090,170.95 as the low bidder meeting specification for the I-10 Commerce Park expansion. The Board of Commissioners authorized the advertising of the bids. We received bids. You have the bid tab. There we had 9 respondents, and Roberson Underground is the low bid. We're recommending award to Roberson Underground Utilities.
Mr. Cooey,
Where's the $1 million coming from?
the state.
The
We,
state has agreed to fund that?
Yes, sir. We went to, not this past session, but the one before that. We put that as one of our legislative priorities, asked for $1 million to add additional infrastructure in there to hopefully make it more attractive. And we got the money, and as the wheels of government turn, we're just now getting to where we're going to be able to put that money to work, and that's what this is related to.
And the $1 million, that's going to be to get power deeper to the platform? I mean, what are we doing
We're
for the
building
$1
roadways.
Oh, that's more than
drainage.
just electrical stuff then?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Trying to gain access to other
Okay.
portions of the property
Roadways,
that,
water, sewer, and stormwater.
Okay, thanks.
and then we have, just so you know, we have another request in this year that didn't make it all the way through the funding process, and so we'll try again. If there's no comments or questions from members of the board, I'm prepared to move this item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. And the last item,
Is a park development process for county-owned property adjacent to Holly OLF. Discussion of the general steps that are going to be required for the development of the property owned by Santa Rosa County. Commissioner Williamson contacted us about the review of the feasibility. There are several things that we need to work through and need to get direction from the board, one of which is access. As you see in your handout, the property is wrapped around the western side of OLF Holly, and you come through a portion of Holly by the Sea to get there in a circuitous manner to get to the property. One of the things that was discussed was the possibility of working through the Navy and Gulf Power to obtain a 50-foot wide easement, access easement off of East Bay Boulevard. There are environmental factors. There's wetlands and the elevated groundwater table, and then water and sewer infrastructure should we decide to do any restrooms and those sorts of type facilities. And of course, the development costs associated with the engineering permitting, the design, geotechnical work, and wetlands delineation, as well as the overall construction cost. We will be required to also hire a geotechnical engineer to do some soil boring so that we can ascertain a lot of those design parameters.
Thank you, Roger. And here's where this request came from is looked at all of the county-owned property in District 4 and the county-owned property that would be zoned to allow for parks and recreation. This is one of the ones that was identified. So it was trying to add additional athletic field space. We know that the south end of the county especially, we're really struggling with having enough space for youth sports programming. And so This was just trying to find out, is this site feasible? And in the process of doing that, Michael and Roger's team have identified what you can see here is quite a few roadblocks that would have to be overcome. So I don't know what would be the best thing to do, but I did want to make sure that, look, either this site is going to be an option for us to add space, or it's not, and we can cross that one off the list, and we can try to look at the Bergeron Road area where those spray fields, to see if any of those can be used for a combined use. But bottom line, don't want to speak for Commissioner Lynchard, but in the south end of the county, we need to find space wherever we can to provide additional access for youth and to give the fields that we currently have an opportunity to recover. The football field and the soccer complex at Navarre is in dire straits, and our staff is doing everything they can to keep it in good shape. But if we don't find another field where we can rotate off of that one, it's just going to be nothing but dirt. So this option that's ahead of us, what kind of time or money are we looking at to let us know if this is a feasible location or not? Because it seems like, this sounds expensive. Everything that you said sounds really expensive here. You start talking about bringing sewer and water in there and wetlands and all that stuff.
Yes, it's not inexpensive. I don't have those numbers today, but it's certainly, if desire of the board to direct us, we can come back with some preliminary numbers. Now, it wouldn't be an actual design or the layout of the park, but we will try to get some planning numbers.
Well, I saw some preliminary size considerations where, a site plan was put in there. It looked like maybe 2 full-size fields. So this sounds like this would be well over $250,000 easily when we start just talking about turn lanes and 50-foot access roadway back there and stormwater and that type of stuff. No building, nothing. Just to get back there to utilize it, could we maybe get an idea of what that number would be? I just don't want to make a request or ask the board to make a request to use a lot of staff time on something that is not going to be cost feasible, but I would like to know what type of money we're talking about here. Is there any way that you could let us know that?
Yes, we'll try to sharpen our pencil and get you a planning figure.
Tony, would that be the normal request here, or follow-up would be to direct staff to provide some kind of broad-based cost projections on the development of this parcel for a
Yes, I think we could do some sort of cost analysis to determine that at least a high-level magnitude, something to give you a kind of a go-forward, or this is just not realistic type number.
Okay. Knowing how strained we are on resources, I would hate to see them spend a crazy amount of time on it. It's not feasible. So is that good enough direction if we just direct staff to provide that cost analysis? Okay. And would make that request without objection and put that to, do we need to have that? I'll come right to you. Do we need to have that for Thursday, or?
We could just strike that. We'll bring it back to you when we got it.
Okay. Commissioner Parker?
I wholeheartedly support it. As you know, I have kind of tried to charge the horse with Parks and Recreation in my district until the month of June, and then I put the brakes on. But I was just thinking, listening here, because I remember being in the South End when we all went down there to do the town hall, and folks were talking about, hey, we need some reprieve and grasses on the field and all. So I'm just wondering if the costs were too exorbitant to be covered by rec funds that you and Commissioner Lynchard work out. Could we not mitigate some of those by put in a couple fields that we have a well or water, that we didn't necessarily get to the point where you have restroom facilities, that where you're not running sewer, or the cost, or even on the road? I mean, even if we have an easement and a paved road to get back there, I mean, we're talking about building an area for kids to play. I'm just throwing that out there to where if the costs were too high to build the end all that we want, if in the meantime we could not get something to where kids still have the parks to play on, but it's not near the infrastructure costs. So I was just throwing that out there because it seemed like if that's going to be a roadblock, do we have to do those things? Do we have to provide restrooms and large pavilions and paved roadways initially to even allow our kids to play on grass fields?
Well, I don't want to speak for Commissioner Lynchard, but I certainly appreciate you looking to help me allocate my rec funds. Appreciate that. It's good to know you're looking out for me. All I'm looking at is a place where we can put additional football fields, multi-use athletic fields, as minimal amount of infrastructure as possible. Not looking for any type of, we're going to rival Disney sports thing here. It's just, can we get some fields put in place somewhere? And so I thought I would start with the property that we own and find out, is it feasible, is it not? If, for example, it would cost $500,000 to put in 2 soccer fields, I think that that would probably not be a good use of funds, and we probably would need to look at a more economical option. But I think that, looking at the cost projections and figuring out, is it worth taking the next step, then that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I was
Bottom
just,
line, we got to add more space, man, down there. We're struggling.
totally agree. I was trying to help you commit some of Commissioner Lynchard's funds, but I'm just saying when they run the cost analysis, if it's going to be way up here, maybe in part of that they could run is, okay, what would be the bare minimum required? I would just hate to see, I know what you're trying to do, and I support it. I mean, we heard the people. I'm just trying to say,
I
if
think
when
this is
staff
bare
looks
minimum.
at it, if it's going to be too costly.
I think this is bare minimum.
I don't know. We grew up, we'd drive out to the field. We'd have a dirt road driving out there. And so those are just, I don't know. I guess we're past that now.
I'd be down with that. Just get us safe access to this parcel of land, and could we put fields there? That would be fine for the short term. It definitely would provide some relief.
That's all I was hoping is when you give those cost analysis, you could give us cheap as possible, then preferred, I guess you'd say.
Love it. That's a great suggestion. Bare bones, just get us there and get kids to play ball. And then the Lynchard option. Crickets. There's nothing there. Got nothing. All right. Well, we've moved that to a time to be determined in the future. That takes care of engineers report. Outstanding. Now we move on to public services. Commissioner, Vice Chairman Cole.
Boy, Chairman knows how to make friends, doesn't he?
I'm not spending his money. Parker is.
All right. Public Service Committee, Chair's Care Agreement. Discussion of sharing agreement with Shands Teaching Hospital and Clinics Incorporating, doing business as UF Health Shands Care for the use of a 800 megahertz, mega whatever it is, radio frequency. I had some concerns as I read through the contract, and maybe Roy can clarify it. Under the recitals, go down to Santa Rosa obligations. A couple of things that concerned me was Santa Rosa shall at its expense. That was one concern. I know we'll do that, but want to make sure there's no sticking points there. The one I really didn't like was item F. Santa Rosa will not enter into, directly or indirectly, any similar agreement or arrangements for sharing its county-wide 800 megahertz radio frequency and related systems. I don't think it should be any of their business who we share that with. I mean, that's...
Mr. Baker and I have discussed this on a number of occasions and have gone a little bit to and fro with Shands. We don't have any intention or need or desire to do any other. I mean, this is the only provision that, the only group that's going to be utilizing this.
Okay.
Or would be. So that's not really a concern. We did look at the language. and we had some concerns in regard to some of the insurance requirements that they had placed on us. They had some exorbitant requirements for $10 million and $12 million, and we changed that. We do have the ability to terminate with 60 days' notice if we wanted to go with somebody else. So this has been, I mean, we've looked at it on a number of occasions, and this is what we think we can deal with. It's really to their benefit more than ours, quite frankly, but it's something that we think is reasonable.
All right, and how do we, how about item number 18 on confidentiality? It says that basically we won't share this information, but I don't see how under freedom of information.
The only information that we would not be able to share or would not be required to share would be proprietary information, which is defined under Chapter 119.
Okay.
We can't enter into an agreement that would restrict the public records.
All right. Just want you to know I'm doing my homework.
That's what happens when you have two gators working on something.
All right. All right, well, hearing that from our county attorney, then I'd like to move that to Thursday's agenda without objection.
Hearing no objection, the item's moved.
Item 2 is Allentown Volunteer Fire Department high-pressure breathing air compressor. This is a discussion of approval to purchase a high-pressure breathing air compressor from a parent low bidder, meeting specifications, which is North American Fire Equipment Company. This has all been discussed and moved through the Fire Chiefs Board and through Brad Baker and Emergency Services. So if there's no questions or comments from the board members, I'm ready to move that to Thursday for a final vote without objection.
Hearing no objection, the item's moved.
And item 3 is change order approval request of 6450 Howard Avenue and approval to exceed project maximum. This discussion of approval of the change order request for substantial rehabilitation project is located at the aforementioned house in Milton, and will allow the project to exceed the limits. Had a little concern with that one too. It's and the fact that according to what we're reading here, the entire house has to be rewired because of some grounding issues. And of course, we've hired an independent third party, RB Engineering, to go through there and make these recommendations. I still find it hard to believe this house has survived and been erected all these years with this type of wiring. I was wondering if the major appliances could be rewired. There's pretty deep description. And I know this is money we get from the federal government, but we're still stewards of it. But it looks like, if it has to be done, it has to be done, but it looks like a little bit of overkill to me. And I didn't know if maybe we could, prior to approving this on Thursday, we could have one of our electrical inspectors go out and reaffirm this.
We can do that, Mr. Chairman. I think the point you get to on one of these, obviously, once we're engaged and involved and there's been especially in the electrical world, there's been a problem identified and you really get to the point of doing sort of the best available and the most safe method. And I think the most safe method is to rewire the house.
Okay.
It's just a concern that you either miss something once you've identified these issues. That's probably our biggest concern, is that we kind of try to piecemeal it and miss something, and now that we know there's an issue.
And I'm okay with that. It just seems like lately a lot of these rehabilitations, we've had to keep raising the amount of money we're willing to put into them and go back on some of these change orders. I just want to make sure we can.
And honestly, I don't think we'll ever get, as long as we're doing substantial rehab to older homes that have had little to no maintenance, I do not believe we'll ever get to the point where we won't see some change orders from time to time. It's a fact of life and what we're doing.
All right. Then I'll move that to Thursday without objection, and Mr. Chairman, that concludes public service.
I was just wondering, what would be the process if we wanted to put it out to bid? Because I can tell you, this is a quarter of the cost of the whole thing. I've had 2 houses rewired within the past 2 years myself, and I'm pretty sure it could be done for less than $8,600. So if we want to talk about being prudent with it, what would be the process if we didn't allow this, that we could put it out to bid? And we're not talking about a big house. And I mean, even if you said $4 a square foot, which is a little bit different project, but that's even to have companies come in and swap out aluminum to copper. I mean, we're still only arriving at half of this cost.
Well, I know when I was still at Development Services, the number I was hearing for the copper swap outs you're talking about, or the aluminum swap outs, was in the high $6,000 range. Now, that's what I understood was a common number at that time. I'd have to talk with staff and our program manager about this. Obviously, we're in the middle of a project, and I don't know if we do a bid and a selection, and we certainly are pushing that time frame. I'm not saying it couldn't be done. I'm saying it complicates it somewhat. We could obtain quotes and kind of start from scratch on that piece. I'll just have to think through the contractual situation we have with the low bidder, and that, I don't know that it's not doable. It's just a little complicated probably to think through.
I probably wouldn't have said anything if the chairman wouldn't have brought it up, but I mean, I agree with Commissioner Cole. You're absolutely right. If somebody says, hey, something's a danger, we're involved, we got to fix it. But the fact that in their own statement, they have, the old 2-strand copper wiring with that old cloth type sheeting without a ground, that doesn't present a hazard as far as to the level of it's not insurable or that it's an immediate danger. I mean, even by our own code, our building department, we don't require them to replace that when they do a rehab unless they get into having to replace it. I mean, we don't say, hey, this is a safety hazard, and if you're going to do something to your home, you got to do this. So could we not put it back out for bid, or are we just chasing the car for no reason? I mean, I'm not trying to delay it, but he brought up about being prudent with the money. Again, I'm the junior guy on the board here, so I'm just going to I'll say that I stated my comments, and I'm not making any objection to the motion.
We'll follow the board's guidance. We can research further what it would involve to put it out for a bid, or at least to solicit additional quotes. Again, I'm not saying that's not doable. I just know when we get in the middle of one of these contracts, we do have time frames that the contract is calling for. Again, we just need to work with the contractor that has this job to reach their agreement on how it's kind of a 3-party agreement with the homeowner, the contractor, and the county. So we have 2 parties involved to help decide this.
Any further questions?
No, I appreciate it.
And I agree. I appreciate you backing me up on that, because, when you read remove and replace 15 switches for $450, I know them switches are about $2 a piece. So, and 45 cover plates that have to come off anyway to do the switches and the boxes. It just seems like we're getting gouged a little bit when they get into these projects and find something. They think, well, we're doing it for the government, so we can add a little bit of extra there. So I know they wouldn't be doing a job for me, I'll guarantee that. So, all right, I'll move that to Thursday without objection. If we can find out anything else by then, we don't have to vote it up or down. So thank you.
Hearing no objection, the item's moved.
All right, that concludes this report.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Cole. Public Works Committee, Commissioner Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 9 items. First is discussion of lowering the speed limit on Willow Glen Drive and Penskara Drive in the Willow Glen subdivision from 25 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour as requested by the Homeowners Association. Stephen, any comment?
We discussed this with the HOA Board of Directors and let them know that we don't feel like that reducing the speed limit from 25 to 20 on the signs is going to change driver behavior. So while we don't object to this reduction in the speed limit, we have let the HOA know that they shouldn't expect a dramatic change in driver behavior.
All right, I appreciate it. I would move this to Thursday's agenda without objection, but the chairman is missing.
Mr. Chair, move to Thursday.
Commissioner Cole?
Yep, we'll move it. Move to Thursday.
All right, it is moved to Thursday's agenda without objection. Number 2, fuel management system replacement. Discussion of replacing the existing fuel management system at the Public Works Yard with a fuel master system to be installed by Panhandle Pump Company, Incorporated, at the cost of $17,232 from Road and Bridge Reserves. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, recommend moving this to Thursday's agenda without objection.
So moved.
Number 3, discussion of replacing the existing fuel dispensing system at the Public Works Yard with a system to be installed by Panhandle Pump Company, Incorporated, at the cost of $20,784 from Road and Bridge Reserves. Recommend moving this to Thursday's agenda without objection.
Hearing no objection, the item is moved.
Number 4, discussion of approval of resurfacing the following roads in District 1 at an estimated cost of $13,050. Trailer Trail, McCollum Drive, I would recommend moving those to Thursday's agenda without objection.
Hearing no objection, the item is moved.
Number 5, discussion of approval of resurfacing the following roads in District 2 at an estimated cost of $18,280. Kim Drive and Vanity Fair Road, recommend moving those to Thursday's agenda without objection.
Mr. Chair.
Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you. I'm going to have some discussion with Steve Furman about these two. On Kim Drive, we may want to try to investigate the possibility of a holding pond there due to the recent flooding. Just haven't had a chance really to talk to Stephen a lot about that. And on Vanity Fair Road, I attended the city council meeting the other day and made them aware that there was those dollars available for that. And unless I hear otherwise, we'll go ahead and move forward with Vanity Fair Road. But I wanted to let the city council have the option of if they had another road that would quantify or they thought was more necessary, or even wanted to piggyback us with some other improvements on Vanity Fair Road. I wanted to make that option available to them. So just let the board know, we'll see what we got on Thursday on those two. Thank you.
So at this time, you want to hold or you want to move forward?
Let's move them forward until Thursday. Thank you.
Okay. Recommend moving to Thursday's agenda without objection.
Hearing no objection, the item is moved.
Number 6, discussion of approval of the resurfacing the following roads in District 3 at an estimated cost of $39,650. R. Whitfield Road and Yucatan Street, recommend moving those to Thursday's agenda without objection.
Hearing no objection, item is moved.
Number 7, discussion of approval of resurfacing the following roads in District 4 at an estimated cost of $21,450. Lowesburg Street, recommend moving that to Thursday's agenda without objection.
Hearing no objection, the item is moved.
Number 8, discussion of approval of the resurfacing of the following roads in District 5 at an estimated cost of $23,200. Crestmount Court, Eastview Place, Ocean Breeze Lane, from Hickory Shores Boulevard to 1647 Ocean Breeze Lane, and Sundyland Court. I would recommend moving those to Thursday's agenda without objection.
Hearing no objection, item is moved.
Thank you. Last one. Number 9, discussion of approval of quote for the replacement of air conditioning unit for the Supervisor of Elections Office from Wingate's Air Conditioning Incorporated in the amount of $12,900 based on comparison shopping. This item is budgeted for in the building maintenance budget. I would recommend approval without objection. I'm sorry, move it to Thursday's agenda without objection.
Hearing no objection, the item is moved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my report.
Well done, Commissioner Salter. On to Budget and Financial Management Committee. Commissioner Parker, bring this thing in for a landing.
Thank you. Item number 1, discussion of construction contract awarded to Roberson Underground Utility LLC in the amount of $1,415,761 as low bidder meeting specification for the Ponderosa Road paving and utility MSBU project. I would recommend moving that to Thursday without objection.
Hearing no objection, the item is moved.
Item number 2 is discussion of budget amendment 154 of this year in the amount of $1,026 to reallocate funds from the salaries account for final payment for a position filled by Landrum Services in the procurement department. I'd recommend moving that to Thursday without objection.
Hearing no objection, the item is moved.
Items number 3 through 11 are all budget amendments that just reflect actions that the board has previously approved. I would recommend approving or moving items number 3 through 11 to Thursday's agenda without objection.
Hearing no objection, items 3 through 11
and
are moved.
Thank you. Item number 12, I would recommend moving approval of the check register to Thursday's agenda without objection.
Hearing no objection, check register is moved.
And that concludes the Budget and Financial Management Committee report.
Good report. Now move on to public forum. Would any members of the public wish to address the board? Councilman Snow.
Just a quick question. Commissioner Salter brought up a speed limit. Of course, a lot of people think I'm in control of Avalon Boulevard. Where do we stand on the 45 to 55 on the southern end towards the interstate? Has anybody looked at changing that speed or having that study done?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Parker.
According to Sean Ward, who's our transportation planner, DOT, we are going to submit the request this month. He's already talked with them and sent me some email correspondence. They had to wait until July, I guess is a full year after total completion, to be able to do the speed limit study or whatever. And they will do that. They just had to wait that full year for the county to go ahead and move forward. I talked with him in May, I believe it was. He said he had it on his calendar to go ahead and submit that to them this year. I'll touch back base with him. Yeah, I don't see his department head here. I'll touch back base with him just to make sure that gets done. And from what he told me with DOT, I believe that probably say an assumption is safe that at that time, probably go to 55, but they'll have to make that determination then.
All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Cooey?
I'll make an attempt to be brief. As early as 1909, the state of Florida started working towards the Sunshine Laws. And in 1967, a constitutional amendment that, for the record, in the history of the state of Florida, received more positive on a percentage basis than any other constitutional amendment ever, at a little better than 92% of the Florida residents at that time agreed that the Sunshine Law was a good thing. I mention those things because I have a concern, and I'm going to ask you as a board to take consideration. The 5 of you have a fiduciary responsibility on the money that gets handed out, whether it goes to this group or that group or in-house spending. And there was a lot of discussion on that today, and I know you all take care and concern on that. My comments are concerning 501c3s. And when we talk about funding, there's direct funding. Sometimes you guys have seen fit to directly give money to a 501c3. Sometimes you use county employees to assist in the grant writing portion, which is a use of a taxpayer money. And finally, the grants themselves are being used as, typically we find as using the good name of Santa Rosa County when these grants are written for these to come out. I would suggest to you that it should be board policy that when we give money, or we make a decision to give money to assist in writing a grant, or we allow the county's name to be used in that these organizations follow the Sunshine Law. I think not only myself, but the majority of the citizens in Santa Rosa County would agree that transparency is key to this. And there sometimes are circumstances where 501c3s maybe start out okay, there's changes in organization, people and all that. I would also suggest to you that any 501c3 should follow the Sunshine Law. Additionally, I believe that their minutes, their board makeup, should be kept in a repository, whether it be online or at the county facility, so that the citizens will have a chance to view that. You know, for example, you might decide to give some money to the Red Cross. I think the folks would like to be able to look and see what is their board organization, all of those particulars. Citizens in general, I think, are generous to these thoughts and these different things that come up in some of these 501c3s. But I think it's important that it become board policy that you have to follow the Sunshine in your organization to be considered for any of those dollars. So I put that in front of you. I know this is not a decision that's going to be made today. Commissioner Williamson, you're the chairman. I'd like all five of you to give it some thought and some consideration. I think it's the right thing to do. Transparency is what makes this whole thing work. It stops questions being asked. I'm not here to pick on anybody. I just think it's, I've seen some issues in other places where commissioners thought they were doing the right thing, but when they dug in a little bit more, and a good example I'll give you is Okaloosa County with the TDC. I mean, that was an absolute train wreck. I mean, $100,000 worth of motorcycles, an RV, a $890,000 boat, a house, some furniture, and a lot of parties that none of us got invited to. I want to ensure that the citizens and the taxpayers are protected, and the best way to do that is for the organizations that receive taxpayer money have a requirement placed upon them that they follow the Sunshine Law. I think it's a reasonable request, and you know, I'm going to have to ask and follow up. You know, I am going to follow this one, and I hope you'll agree with me that transparency is important. It is the hardworking taxpayers' money, and I'd appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Having no further business to come before the board, we are adjourned.